Hello and welcome to another episode of the biggest diplomacy game of all time. I'm here once again with Ezio. Hey Ezio.
Hello, hello.
And we are continuing from the fall of 1644, which was not quite where we left off. We actually left off one phase later, but it got pointed out that I missed something pretty major that happened in my theatre on the last video, so we're going to start in the retreats phase just to talk about that. As a quick reminder, Ezio is playing Stockholm up here. I am playing as Ghent, which is no longer in Ghent. I've been exiled to Nantes. And I did pronounce that right this time. I apologise to all the French people who were watching the last video and were cringing hearing me saying Nantes over and over and over again. I hope I'm going to remember to do it correctly this time around. Right, so let's jump right in with the thing I forgot. In fact, there were two things.
Well, one of the things that we should also mention for viewers is that this is part 3 in a series, and if you haven't watched parts 1 and 2, go watch those, or else none of this is going to make any sense. Not that it makes much sense anyways, but at least you'll have a little bit of context for what's going on.
Yeah, chaos never makes a huge amount of sense. But yeah, it will make a lot more sense if you watch part 1 first, followed by part 2, and then this one. The link to the playlist will be in the description below if you can't find it on YouTube's recommendations. Anyway, I will start with the things I missed. So first off, I was asked by Edinburgh to clarify that there is a British alliance called the GBA. This one was a deliberate exclusion because I do not think the GBA actually existed at this point in the game. There was like a lot of talk about getting everyone in the British Isles together as like a big gang to team up against the Vikings, right? But it never really went through. Like, there was always some degree of chaos and distrust between all the people in this area, and they were all kind of fighting each other. And yeah, and also now you have Azores in Plymouth, who is not even someone from the British Isles. So I think it's not all that relevant, but it is. I will say it anyway because it got pointed out that I missed it, and it was quite a big factor in the negotiations, even if it wasn't in the final results.
The alliance is one that was ostensibly created last year, but you can see that it didn't even last the full year because Edinburgh stabbed Ireland to take Dublin, but Edinburgh didn't even build because Azores stabbed him, and so it really didn't do much or accomplish anything, and so I didn't mention it because I didn't feel it was particularly relevant.
Yep. Yeah. I think this is probably the number one thing that shows that the Great British Alliance wasn't all that effective in that they did immediately stab. That is Great Britain for you. But the important thing to note, they were attempting to get an alliance going, even if they completely failed at doing so.
Yeah, and it's what let Edinburgh think that they were going to get to walk into Dublin.
Yes.
So,
Which they did.
I'd be right about it.
Yeah.
So, that's a thing. But what's the other thing you want to talk about, Captain Meme?
Okay, so if you watched the last video and read the comments below, you may have noticed an extremely long comment from Bob Zabilda, who you might recognise from Media Wars 4. He was playing as England in that game. In this game, he's playing as Sardinian, our Sardinia Piedmont, and he is ostensibly the leader of the Italian alliance. They don't have a strict, like, system of government. Like, the Wheel had the whole democracy thing, and the HBE had this election thing, and the Vikings were just giving everything to Ezio to control. The Italians didn't really have any kind of strict system, but as far as leadership goes, he was definitely the person doing, like, the leadership negotiation, trying to direct things on this front. And then on the northern front, you had, like, Rome and Trieste basically collaborating to attack the Wheel up here. So he is doing the majority of the negotiations right now, and something quite important happens in the retreat phase. If you want his point of view on it, and it's pretty detailed, you can go to the last video and look for his comment. From my point of view, right, what happened here was there is this retreat that Madrid possibly has. They can retreat into a few different locations, but realistically they're only going to either retreat into Madrid or like take their unit off the board and rebuild in Madrid, or they're going to retreat into Barcelona. Now, on the face of it, you might think that a retreat into Barcelona would be a really good thing for us, right? Because it breaks apart this Spanish alliance and makes the Baleares get stabbed by Madrid, and then we're kind of happy. Unfortunately, Baleares had basically said to Spain, hey, you can retreat into Barcelona if you want to, I'll still be alive over here, right? And then you'll be able to build another unit and defend yourself properly up here. And I was looking at that and I was thinking, oh god, I do not want that to happen. That would be really, really bad for me. Because well, I don't know if it's actually as bad as I was fearing it, but the idea of taking a fleet off from here and putting an army back over here, the army is much more threatening towards France than any fleet down here could ever be. At least my section of France. Right, so I do not want two armies here. It kind of stops any chance of any progress here. So I really didn't want Madrid to retreat into Barcelona. At the same time, there were some negotiations going on the Italian front. The Spanish were basically doing everything they could to try and peace out the Italians and make sure that the Italians turned around. And they were offering various deals in order to do that. And at one point they said, hey, Sardinia, you can have Baleares if you go as far as that and then leave us alone. Just give us room to pivot. We can move Baleares, back into Valencia or such like. And then, we can all have peace. You can go and focus on the HBE or the wheel or whatever, and we'll focus on France. And I was a bit worried about that being a possibility as well, because obviously, that's actually a pretty good deal, I think, for both powers. Italy is in a bit of an interesting spot here where they're attacking in the north, right? They have a bit of a peace with the HBE, but the HBE also don't have that many places to go. And they're throwing their units up against a Spanish front, but there are a bunch of fleets all over here. So I really didn't want that deal to happen. So I immediately said, hey, Sardinia, you should say yes to this deal. And I made it quite obvious, by the way I was wording it, that it is, you should say yes, right? For one, I think anyone would question why I was saying that in the first place, because it's obviously not in my interests for the Spanish and the Italians to make up, but I was also basically nudge nudge wink wink, very obviously saying say yes, because then it's pretty obvious that my intention is, hey, you should take Baleares and then continue your attack anyway. At least that was what I thought was fairly obvious. And I thought this is kind of a win-win situation here, right, because I actually can't remember why, but Madrid had said they weren't going to retreat into Barcelona if the deal went through. Oh, okay, that's why. Because if Madrid retreats into Barcelona and Sardinia takes Baleares as part of this deal, then Baleares dies, right? So, as part of this deal, Madrid has to retreat into Madrid instead, and I really wanted that to go through. So I was like, yeah, say yes to this deal, it's fine. Unfortunately, Sardinia is someone who reads messages very literally, I guess, and also who values his word quite highly, and the honesty of his word. So he saw my message saying, say yes to this, and went, oh, alright, I'll say yes to this then. And then agreed, okay, yeah, we'll peace out with the Spanish. And so Madrid retreats into Madrid. Well, they don't retreat, they take this off the board, right? And then rebuild it in Madrid on the next turn. Why have we got a... Oh, we've got a clean map prior to builds here. So they rebuild this unit in Madrid, And during the build phase, because now I've got the thing that I wanted to happen already, right? The Barcelona retreat hasn't happened, and I really want to, like, it's become quite obvious that Sardinia is literally meaning this. And Bordeaux also comes back and goes, wait, have they agreed to peace out? Are the Italians stabbing us here? And Sardinia was going, oh, it's okay, Nantes gave me, like, Ghent gave me permission to do this. I was like, that, oh. So then I start walking back my words and saying, "Oh, you got my secret message, right? You got my secret message that you shouldn't really accept this." And I tried to like vaguely hide that message in another conversation, but it wasn't very well hidden. The idea of it was just to make it clear to Bordeaux and such that I didn't actually mean that they should peace out. And suddenly Sardinia is going, wait, no, my honor, I've agreed to this now. I can't back out of it. And there was just a lot of weirdness around that situation. If you want to learn more about it, as mentioned, please go to the Bob's the Builder comment on the last video, because at this point, I think that's basically as far as it goes. It gets Sardinia and Bordeaux kind of annoyed at each other almost. But eventually, like, Madrid basically says, hey, I know that this deal isn't real, like, because of what Ghent is saying, and Sardinia goes, what the hell? And the whole thing kind of falls apart, but at the same time, Sardinia is really annoyed at me because of what I've done here. Which obviously I don't care that much about, whether Sardinia is annoyed at me or not. I'm all the way over here and he is all the way down here. But it does have a little bit of an impact in the next few turns. So sorry to leave that there. That is a bit of a weird end to that particular story, but it is what happened here. Okay. So, with that bit of weirdness happening in Spain, we get to the build phase, and of course, I don't have any builds here. I'm just sat here in Bay of Biscay. We've got the French unit, like the Parisian unit, out into Navarra, and all these Bordeaux units down south with their Frenchies fries. So, I've got nothing to do during this phase except talk to Italy and Spain. Meanwhile, Ezio has far more to do, because if you remember the end of the last phase, Oslo had just replaced out, and then the replacement had just stabbed. So, Ezio, do you want to talk about what's going on up here?
Yeah, because the North is a chaotic mess right now. So, again, last phase, Finland and I and King of Prussia all agreed, without talking about it, to stab the Commonwealth. And so we've just added on this front as a war, which is very exciting. Northern Germany is at war with us. That's Bremen and Rostock. We've managed to capture Kiel. Copenhagen has swapped out. So lots of fighting over there, and Oslo just subbed in and stabbed. So things are not looking good, to put it lightly. And if you look at the tactics, if Oslo builds an army in Oslo, that borders Jämtland, which is really a brutal province to have an army in if you're Trondheim or Umeå or Stockholm. So I really don't want that to happen. I really, 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 really want to avoid an army in Oslo. But Oslo has just stabbed the Vikings, and I'm a Viking, so I have absolutely no leverage on Oslo. There's nothing I can say. I can try to threaten them and say, hey, I'll kill you if you do this, but Oslo, I get the feeling that's not a particularly effective pitch here. Um, if you look at army or fleet in Bergen, it doesn't have any of those same tactical implications. It can't reach Umeå this year. Bergen can only reach Stockholm this year via Oslo, so if we can take Oslo and force it, then there's no problems. So how do you do that if you're trying to convince Oslo to build Army Bergen? Um, well, I'll tell you how I did it. I told Oslo that I was gonna stab the Vikings with them, and that it would be the two of us versus the Vikings. So this is an insane thing that I wouldn't do with most players because if you look at my position right now with my centers in Narva and Wilno, if I try to stab the Vikings, I lose Narva and Wilno because that army in Novgorod walks into Pskov. Umia has armies in Livonia and Smolensk, so Wilno isn't safe. And really, it just is not good. So I don't feel like I can actually fight the Vikings at all. And I'm just hoping that Oslo, as someone who has just stabbed the Vikings, thinks that other people are more likely to stab the Vikings than I am. Also, I am me, and I talk about stabbing a lot, so I think there's a pretty good chance that
Yeah,
people will believe me.
I think your reputation definitely worked to your advantage on this one.
Yes, because for context, in this game, everyone and their mother has been saying for years how I'm going to stab the Vikings again. They saw me dotting Helsingfors, and they were convinced that that was the biggest stab, and that I'm gonna stab everyone and kill them all. And they're like, ah, Ezio's finally stabbing. Excellent, wonderful, great. This makes so much sense. And so I think Oslo maybe read this, maybe didn't, maybe just saw me, maybe wasn't expecting me to have a build, and once they saw me building in Stockholm, they realized that their strategy didn't work and they wanted to change ships. I'm not sure exactly. They didn't put anything in their foot, so I can't tell you what they were thinking. Um, but I but that was a pitch that I made, and that was great. And notably, Trondheim also gets to build an army because they netted Arkhangelsk, which was swapped in because Arkhangelsk got Novgorod, and I don't even think that Umiya is building this phase.
No, they
I think
just
Umiya is
position
still only on two.
around
Yeah,
Wilno, which
around
you
Wilno.
took.
Yeah, jeez. That's rough. Um, but this is still what things look like. And so notably, I actually was considering stabbing the Vikings here. But the way that I was planning on stabbing the Vikings was not going to be a build revealed stab. Um, it would
Yes.
have been a actual stab in the fall. So I would have still done my same build, which is going to be Army Stockholm to coordinate with Trondheim against Oslo. Um, and it was basically going to try to keep things calm, like I would be supporting Trondheim into Oslo, with then the plan to walk into Umeå and Helsingfors in the fall.
Gotcha. Ugh.
And I was, which is a thing I can do, and I'm really strongly considering it. Um, but I would need to keep my fleet in the Baltic Sea for this to work. And that is the key, because my fleet Baltic Sea would need to do something like support Brandenburg into Gdansk or something. But instead, I decide that my best bet is going to be to secure Gothenburg for myself and stay guaranteed and push west. Around this time is when I talked to Flare about country formables, because that's a thing you can do. And I want to form Sweden. I I picked Stockholm for Swedish Pride, and I'm going to actually be visiting Sweden at some point in this game. And so I would like to form Sweden. And I talked to Flare, and Flare says, well, to form Sweden, I must have Gothenburg and Stockholm and Umeå, which feels like a lot, man.
I mean, it is
Because
accurate to modern Swedish borders, kind of, right? Although I
oh, it
think
is. Oh, it
Umeå
certainly
includes
is.
some
Sweden
of
goes up,
Finland.
including all of
Yeah.
Umeå. I think Umeå goes a little bit further east, maybe, than if Sweden does modern day. But either way, it does encompass all of Sweden. I just feel like you can form Norway without having all of these centers, and people have formed other stuff. And like the basic requirements for a formable were two centers to have a formable, and I have three centers, including the capital of Sweden.
Yep.
I don't know. But either way, to make it happen, I need Gothenburg and Umeå. So if I need to take Gothenburg at some point this game, which is a side quest I have, I guess this is a good time to take Gothenburg.
Uh,
Uh,
yep. You will hear Ezio get quite salty about this whole not being able to form Sweden situation.
oh God, Anyways,
It
what
should
do
be
you read?
noted that
What do you take?
the
Yeah.
GM is Swedish, right? So there is some
Yes.
degree of it's my country, you must form it properly that is
Yeah.
going on here.
I do suspect that Flare being Swedish affected how he feels about Scandinavia in general. Um, but um, this is how this is what this phase was going on, where with the retreats and builds, with everyone on the map saying that Stockholm has left the Vikings, that I am stabbing the Vikings. So I get kicked out of the Vikings. Obviously, I announce I'm stabbing the Vikings first. Um, Finland realizes I'm not stabbing the Vikings. Um, Finland knows immediately what's going on, and he says something very measured in response to me saying that I was stabbing the Vikings, where he's like, I'm not going to overreact to this. I'll wait to see builds. And then I immediately say, no, I am stabbing. Nothing reasonable. And then I think Finland's like, oh yeah, right. Oh no, he's stabbing the Vikings. Hey everybody, nobody listen to Ezio anymore because he's not a tactician. Um, blah blah blah. The auditor has me get kicked out. I don't even know if they include me in the audit because I announced that I've left, but they might give me the red to say that I've stabbed. Unclear. But Arcane starts going, just working overtime, communicating with people to try to make sure that I lose Narva and Wilno, and it's like, yes, yes, you're right, I lose Narva and Wilno. Don't, don't see? Do you understand? This isn't happening. But he's going so hard about this. I just think he wants an excuse to take Narva. I don't think he actually thinks I'm stabbing, but maybe he did. But he has. He's been trying to. He wants to take Narva. Yeah, the Commonwealth is like, oh, hey, look, Ezio is stabbing. Should we work with Ezio or the rest of the Vikings? The HBE is like, this is a very interesting position now, where we are the fulcrum between the two halves of the Viking alliance, and we should push north and try to capitalize on the chaos and stuff. And it's like, just so many posts about people saying it that I was stabbing, and I just needed to stop reading the phase for most of this build actually, because I couldn't hold it down because I didn't it made it obvious to me that absolutely nobody was looking at the tactics of the other side of the map. Nobody was paying even a little bit of attention to what's on the board. They were just reading
Well, they
press
saw.
messages like the longest game of telephone.
I think it's because they saw it was you, right? And it's like Ezio is stabbing. Oh yeah, that is a very Ezio thing to do. Should be
It's
noted
not like
that
Ezio to announce he's stabbing everyone in the retreats. That's not an
yeah.
Ezio thing to do.
The build phase is not a good phase to stab, just as a general rule for diplomacy, for those looking for diplomacy advice in this Chaos game, which I don't think you're going to get a ton of, but yeah. If you stab in the build phase, then you're giving your opponents a whole year to prepare for you actually taking a center, right? So that is
And if
the
you stab in
worst
retreats,
possible
you're letting
time.
them build to counter your stab, and then you move at them.
That is
Yes,
true. It's reasonable to stab in retreats if you are stabbing with your retreat, like, to take a
in the
dot.
fall. Yeah,
But it is not very reasonable to stab at a time like this, where there's literally nothing you can do to take centers until the next full phase. So yeah, it was quite telegraphed that this was fake. I remember thinking when I first saw you talking to Oslo, I was like, oh, he's exploring his options right now. And then I looked at the board and I was like, oh no, wait, he's just trying to get Oslo not to build Army Oslo. Like, it was so blatant because it was also one of the first things you mentioned, right? That they should build a
well, yeah. It
fleet.
was well because Oslo wasn't around very much. I knew that if I had a very brief window to strike, and it's be impulsive, and it's like I think the message went something along the lines of, "Hey Oslo, are you around? Give me a ping once you are." And then like sometime later, Oslo gives me a ping. Hey, I'm around now. And I'm like, "Hey, what do you want from this game?" They're like, "I want to do something cool and fun." And I'm like, "Well, would killing the Vikings together be cool and fun?" And they were like, "Yeah." And I was like, "All right, cool, let's do it." For this to work, there's a couple of things that we're gonna need. You can't build an army in Oslo because that's too scary for me. And they're like, all right, sure, more or less. And that was more or less the conversation that I had. And then I like was trying to make it more convincing because I was trying to ping Oslo later in the face to like talk through things as allies and be like, hey, are we feeling about stuff? Like, where do we think things are going to happen? Should we try to work with anyone else? And like, I was hoping to have these conversations and just Oslo wasn't around. So like, even if I was like, because look, there's a little bit of a chance. Like, look, if Archangels goes like, hey, you know what? Actually, Ezio, let's kill Finland together because I can take a lot of centers off of them, or maybe I want to get Archangelsk back or whatever. And if everything had gone crazy, then maybe I would have actually done this, but probably not. But that didn't happen at all, and also just made it so clear that I didn't want to work with them at all, so I couldn't. So, anyways, this phase was an absolute mess.
Yep.
But the saving grace behind it all is that builds come around. And I was so vindicated. Because it's Army Bergen! Oh, it was the greatest feeling.
I actually thought
Yeah.
You meant to convince them to build a fleet, Bergen. Maybe I missed this bit of chat. What were you trying to get them to do with Army Bergen?
Oh, Fleet Bergen was fine, just not Oslo. Was the important part.
Yeah, but what did you say to them to get them to build Army Bergen? Army Bergen specifically.
Oh,
Like,
I would have preferred Fleet Bergen. I thought Army Bergen was more likely to happen than Fleet Bergen.
fair enough. But yeah.
Yeah, you'll see it makes Trondheim not particularly happy, but that's not the end of the world for me. So here's a fun thing about these games that are run by a GM, and that there is a significant delay between when the orders are locked, but before the map is actually revealed. Unlike most online adjudicators that happen quickly, there's very little time in that gap between orders being locked and adjudication being up. So, on this particular phase, after orders were locked, but before we saw if the Army Bergen had been revealed, I posted this massive wall post basically saying everything I said here, that I was never planning on stabbing the Vikings, this was just to get Army Bergen, and that I want to stay a member of the Vikings with the bunch of the explanation. And I wanted to put it in that particular timing window because it makes clear that Oslo can't react to me saying this, but it also tells the Vikings that I'm not doing this just in reaction to Oslo doing something. Because there's a chance that Oslo had still built Army Oslo, and I didn't see that yet. And I wouldn't want them to think that, like, oh, because Oslo stabbed me, I'm not trying to stab the Vikings now, right? And, like, they didn't do it, so now I'm working with the Vikings against them. So I needed the timing to be here before I saw what Oslo was doing or not, to make that happen. So, a subtle little thing that I was proud of.
Yeah. Looking elsewhere here, I think I recall there were some negotiations over waiving Army Luxembourg that did not come to fruition. Because I guess, like, as Luxembourg in this position, you have so much momentum, you're not going to just give it up by waving, right? Especially when the wheel is focused south, France is focused south, right? The Britain is Britain.
Yeah,
and
with the wheel
Vikings
exploding, you don't want Luxembourg to be vacant,
yes.
right? Like, because Luxembourg doesn't have anything adjacent to it, so even though you trust Strasbourg, you don't want Paris to be able to walk in there.
Yeah.
So
there were also some negotiations that went on over this army here. I wasn't talking about them before because they didn't have an impact, right? The Portugal still built a fleet. I was trying hard to get them to build an army here and come inland and just help us against Madrid, but it didn't come to fruition. They were not. They were just happy to stick with their French allies, and like Morocco and France are working solidly together here. Sorry, Morocco and Spain, not Morocco and France.
Did we talk about the Marrakesh stab on Rabat last phase?
So I can't remember if it was like properly a stab or whether it was agreed. I guess this was oh no, this was this a stab? Because I remember Azores like, Rabat did stab Azores to take Azores, right? Rabat was
Yeah.
very insistent that that was not a stab because Azores was never working with them in the first place. Azores was very insistent that they were working with them in the first place.
Okay,
Um,
as someone who's like reading those messages, Rabat told Azores he wasn't going in to see Azores and wasn't going to kill him if he did.
yeah.
So Rabat said that. So he lied. And so it's that if you consider it, hey, I lied to an enemy, but I wasn't really working with them. They just believed me when I lied to them. That's one way to think about it. That's not necessarily a stab, but
But
however you
yeah,
want to think about it.
remember that Marrakesh and Portugal had convinced Rabat not to like build on the
Way to
previous
build,
turn,
yeah.
to waive a build, and they both take a center here. I think at least one of these was agreed, but I don't really remember. And Rabat ends up on 2 anyway, so I don't think it's much of a stab, right? I'm pretty sure all 3 of them are still working together at this point.
Sure, maybe. Yeah, I believe it.
In
Either way,
fact,
Marquez gets on two like this.
I know that at least they were talking about working together because I was looking at that and going, uh-oh. No, Rabat was a bit, like, unpredictable, just in general, so I was hoping that that unpredictability might result in this Morocco alliance falling apart a little bit more, but I was eyeing up what was going on here and thinking, okay, well, if they build fleets, they are going to come this way, right? Unless I can convince them to attack Spain. So I was very much trying to get Portugal to build army here, and they do not. They stick with their allies. Which again leaves Madrid with the only army in this region, apart from our French one now. There is that. At this point, Spain in general do start talking about potential strategies, and they point out something that I hadn't really thought about that much up to this point, which is that they can stalemate us really, really easily because we didn't go to Coruna, right? If we had convoyed into Coruna, we have the possibility of slipping an army into the back door here and going down into Meridia. But if they just support a unit up into Coruna now, we have our angle of attack is Navarre, Biscay, and Occitania, right? We don't have any fleets in the south unless the Italians very strongly push in, but the Italians are going to take a little while to get there and presumably going to prioritize their own expansion. And of course, if they're in Iberian Current or something, then Biscay is taken off the table too, because I have to defend myself, my own center, otherwise I die. Which does not leave very many units to attack the Spanish. I was looking at this and going, oh god, they are actually right? We can't make progress here. Even we really need the Italians to push in and to get stuff, but even if they do, that's going to take forever, and that doesn't stop the Moroccans from coming up here and attacking me in the meantime. So I'm starting to think this may be a really bad situation. But primarily, I just wanted to make sure that the Parisian army down here and the Bordeaux armies just stay focused south. And I was kind of thinking, okay, if they stay in this war long enough, maybe I have the opportunity to move in and snipe Bordeaux. This unit is in Aquitaine, by the way, not Bordeaux. Build a unit in Nantes, and then start maybe working with Morocco or something along those lines. Because I think that's my route to any potential expansion. This fleet is never going to gain anything elsewhere, and to basically get out of the vassalage that I'm currently in, right? Having convoyed the attacking army away is a huge upside. I'm suddenly a lot more free to do what I want instead of what I'm forced to do by these other players. But getting the extra dot is going to be... That would end up being huge. So this is my focus of attention, trying to make sure I'll be able to snipe Bordeaux at some point right now. Is there anything else you want to talk about in this build phase?
Just want to highlight that the Vikings built 3 again, because we're the best alliance on the board. I mean, okay, Oslo, not necessarily a Viking, but if they didn't stab Gothenburg, then Gothenburg would have had the build instead. So, we're the best alliance. Right.
You are growing quite fast. I mean, HB also... Oh, they didn't actually get a build, right? They got removed one and then Constantinople built. like, I really wish we could talk more about what was happening with the HBE in general, because it seems like a super interesting area, but it was in Elp Chat, so it's like we don't know. The
Well,
Golden Horde
their
is still
priority
like
was,
the
yeah,
enemy, yeah.
yeah, their priority was making sure that the Golden Horde doesn't explode too much in the east, and by coordinating against them, whilst also trying to stay alive, stop the Wheel or Italy from killing them. And so Croatia is here to mess with those dynamics.
Yes. And I should note that I don't think the Golden Horde are called the Golden Horde at this point. They would basically every turn this country was reforming a new nation, which is another part of why Ezio not being allowed to form Stockholm was kind of amusing. But
Well,
this
Sweden, but yes.
sorry, Sweden. Yeah, the Golden Horde were renaming themselves every single turn into a new formable, but I think the Golden Horde was the best name they had, so we're gonna stick to that one.
Yeah.
And also, I was not keeping track of what they were called through the game.
Also, one of the things, when you've been highlighting the HBE, you haven't been circling Cairo as well.
Oh yeah, Cairo is in the HBE, I think.
They are part of it.
I think they're
Like
also
the
part of
southern
the
end of it.
Italians. I don't 100% know. They're at least working with the Italians at this point.
Yeah.
But yeah, they are HBE, so they're
Well,
included in this.
yeah, they were working with the Italians, yes. But
Mhm.
okay, the most frustrating colors are Naples and Smyrna. I don't know. I hate those colors because they are so similar.
I don't
Um,
know. I see them as quite distinct here, but I can
I
kind
see
of
them
see
as
why they
visually
would.
distinct, but look at that fleet on the like light blue background and then the other fleet,
Oh yeah.
and it's real bad.
Well, it's a good thing that won't be a problem forever. Spoilers
Yeah.
alert. Potentially the interesting on the color scheme thing. The thing I was most worried about was Nantes. Sorry, Nantes. Even well, Ghent. I guess the color of me, the color of Azores, and the color of Ireland are all kind of similar in my eyes. I think on this monitor they look a bit different to me because I don't have the blue light filter, but the yeah, on the other monitor they looked basically the same. But yeah, so those are three different powers. And these are two different powers as well. It's gonna become a bit easier on the eyes to distinguish whose unit is whose when people start putting their emblems on stuff. So, like, Bordeaux was really ahead of the curve with the Frenchiest fries. A lot of people start doing it later in the game. I think Edinburgh had the first one, actually. And yeah, Madrid previously, you may have noticed, had a rotated hexagon as their unit, like with the points at the top and bottom. If you notice that, very well done. That is an extremely hard to spot Easter egg on the map. But this build got rotated back again for some reason. All right, so are we done talking about builds?
Yeah, I think so.
All right, let's go ahead
Only in
to the
what,
clean
45
map.
minutes talking about builds? We're slipping.
Yep.
No, only 30 minutes talking about builds. My God.
Well, 40, I think. But yeah.
We did the intro.
Oh, that is true. So, this is the clean map. What were you planning this turn, Ezio?
Uh, High level. Um, Focus on killing Oslo. That's where I can grow, so Oslo needs to die. Um, yep.
It's
That's
such a
that's
boring
basically it.
plan that you're yawning. This is,
Yeah, it's not that exciting. It's just like, let's do it. Like I was trying to do something really exciting, and I was trying to find and fabricate any excuse to stay in the Baltic Sea and to actually just go and kill Finland right here.
yeah.
But I didn't. I've decided that Gothenburg was more important. So this is just some tactics stuff where I think I'm supporting Trondheim into Oslo because that ensures that Bergen can't get into Oslo. Um, and then we're going to have Spitsbergen move into Norwegian Sea to help mess with Oslo, so that way if Oslo takes Trondheim, they can support. This is nice because Iceland had, or Ireland, now in Iceland, after Edinburgh took Ireland, had to disband it, so that fleet that was in Greenland Sea, putting pressure on us, is now gone. Arkhangelsk, the fleet in Arkhangelsk is coming back. So we're just going to try to put much of pressure on there. And then I am going to support myself into Scania and then support myself into Gothenburg. Or no, I think I'm supporting into Oslo first, then not supporting into Scania, but I might be supporting into Scania. I forget the exact tactics that I have out here. That's something that's going on up here. Um, Now, with regards to the Commonwealth, you see King of Prussia looks pretty exposed right now. And it's tough to save him. Um, it is tough. It's not impossible, but um, he's got to basically stay alive by himself. Like I'm gonna move Wilno into Kurland to try to help make progress here, but obviously it doesn't go great. Like Prussia can just bounce Kurland, so I don't really expect to do very much.
Yeah, Umeå
Um,
does well. Finland does still have their units down here, and Kiev disbanded Kiev, so they now have their unit over in Cilicia, right?
this
So
I
Finland
think
can
is the
try and get
phase
round.
that Finland goes on vacation.
Oh, and
Maybe it's
Karthik
the
comes
next
in.
one. Cooler Finland comes in. Use the
Okay,
proper name
so
because I
if
believe his
you're
name was Cooler Finland.
yeah, so if you're familiar with the Diplomacy Broadcast Network, which is like the diplomacy YouTube channel that covers all the tournaments and stuff, Karthik is very regular on there, and he's also been a participant in one of the videos on this channel as well, Diplomacy Wings. But he came in and replaced Finland just for a little bit at this time, so we'll be calling him Cooler Finland.
Yes, Cooler Finland comes in. Um, and because I'm so focused on dealing with nonsense up in Oslo, I pay less attention to what's going on with the Commonwealth because they only have 4 units right now. I remember tracking that Wilno has other stuff going on, so I don't think they're gonna really kill us that hard, but maybe they will. And it's mostly just King of Prussia's got to figure himself out. Good luck. Um, I think Cooler Finland negotiates something with the HBE that involves getting into Kiev and Warsaw, and I just don't understand at all how. Um, but I think that's the thing. So I'm pretty sure that's this phase, and so watch what happens with Cooler Finland because it's awesome. Um, Here I also feel like our king was it next phase? It might have been next phase. But okay, the other thing that's going on is Arkhangelsk is not happy with me. Novgorod and Moscow. Very much annoyed because I like stabbed the Vikings and then said, "Hey, please, don't kill me. I'm a Viking," and they're like, "No, you left Narva. I don't want the Vikings. I don't want you to be in Narva anymore and have to deal with any of this stress ever again. And I'm so pissed at you, and you're so annoying." And brr 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 brr. Brr. I don't think they ever called me literally annoying, but they might as well have.
So they
And I don't
definitely
like that.
just wanted Nava, right? This
Does
is,
seem like they want Narva. I do think that they, right? Obviously they want Narva. I don't want to give them Narva. Um, so that's not great. Like they don't. Archangels doesn't benefit me really. Like they're never going to attack Finland based on the press that I've seen. They're just super buddy buddy with Finland. The whole like Alberta thing that they have in common, and like just the way the press has gone. Like Arkhangelsk would try to ask me things by asking Finland to ask me things. And that's just like that's not someone who plans on working with me. Right. So it's just like, okay, fine, whatever. But no, you're certainly not taking Narva if this is what your relationship with me is like. And so I think I'm like, hey, don't do that. Um, and I basically convince him that if he does that, I'll be pissed at him, and then he shouldn't do it. Um, and that might be next phase, that might be this phase. Point just every phase from the rest of the game, assume that Arkhangelsk is trying to take Narva from me. Um, And in this position, by the way, I want to point out that if he doesn't try to take Narva from me, and if he instead like moves Novgorod south into Moscow, moving Moscow into Don, he could potentially take Bakhchisaray or Astrakhan very easily.
But then that would
Um,
halt the advance against the Golden Horde, who are a dangerous
well, what
power.
if you're in Don? You can help them with the Golden Horde.
Well, not if you're taking Bakhchisaray or
Well, yeah,
Astrakhan.
but you tell them you're helping them with the Golden Horde, and then you take one of them. Like
I
you can
see.
use Don to take it, and then Moscow to walk in wherever.
So basically, as long, the whole thing about a strong power being in the corner applies until it's beneficial for you not for it not to apply.
Yes, yes, you understand now.
uh,
I'm glad you're picking it up. Besides,
Rightio.
if you take Circassia from them, they're only going to be on 2 centers. And a 2 center corner power is not exactly a threat without any allies. And yeah, they might be able to make up and try to attack you, but you've got Finland at your back, and you're gonna have 3 centers. Like, what are they gonna do to you? Anyways, I wanted Arcane. Like, part of the Viking Alliance's strength has been that we are expanding away from the other members, right? Like, that Finland has been pushing away from me, that I've been trying to grow away from Finland. Finland and I aren't the best examples of this with our checkerboard nonsense, but like, we are pushing against our enemies and then expanding, and this works out. And now Archangels doesn't, Archangels just doesn't want to do that, and it's very annoying to negotiate with and to see and deal with,
so,
because I'm just like, grow.
so what's
Yeah,
the approach? Do you manage to convince him not to go for Narva? I wasn't paying that much
you'll need
attention to
to
what was
see,
going on over
you'll
here.
you'll need to see the moves to
Alright.
know if he goes for Narva or not.
Right. I guess I should talk about my region then, with
Yeah,
what was happening this turn. So, as I mentioned previously, the Spanish are talking, and the Moroccans are talking about this possibility of blocking off Coruna and basically stopping any possible attack against them, right? And stalemating us here. And from my own perspective, as mentioned, I am just interested in getting Bordeaux. That is like all I want to happen here. I want Bordeaux and Paris focused south, and I don't really want them to be thinking about the possibility that we're getting stalemated, right? So, first and foremost here, I am saying, hey, it's fine, we just need to keep the pressure on until the Italians get in. And I'm not entirely convinced that the Italians can manage to get in. They have an open Sardinia right now next to a Balearic unit, right? Which can just go in. They need something to cover that, and they end up agreeing to basically push the Sicily unit into Sardinia, push the Cairo unit, I think, into Tyrrhenian Sea. I don't know why they don't push their, like, actual ally in Naples forward and try and give them something, but I guess they want this as like a ward against these units from the HPE over here, despite them technically being allied. So I think this is going to be incredibly slow if they do make any progress, but I don't want to give that impression, so I'm basically saying, hey, this is fine, we'll just continue advancing and like hold out until the Italian support gets there. And we have this problem of Porto is going to a Coruna, and Madrid is offering to support that move potentially, but then also the Spanish come up with something super interesting, and they offer Corsica a convoy into Barcelona, which is it happens for two reasons, right? I think the Italians are basically saying, hey, one of our potential attack opportunities here is Corsica because they are part of the Vikings. They're not part of any alliance down here, right? They're an army, so they'll never do anything at all. And Spain just latches onto that and says, hey, if we get another army in here, we're like super strong. Baleares can still control Baleares, right? There's nothing stopping them from doing this over here. So how about we do that? How about we put another army on this front and then start pushing north, and Corsica can be like an honorary Spanish alliance member, and Corsica is very for it. So at this point, I basically say, hey, Paris, you need to choose one of these things to block, right? You need to block either Coruna or Barcelona, and then that's going to be our move for the turn. It's just going to be delaying the opposition. It's not going to be getting us anything, really. But that's alright, because as long as we delay long enough for the Italians to come in and save us, then we're good.
Yes, as
And
long as we don't do anything for long enough, the game will go in our favor in
yes.
this 1908 endgame.
And bear in mind, what I really want to happen here, right, is Aquitaine ends up in Occitania, Marseille is still defending against the Gulf of Leon potentially attacking, and Navarra is just stuck here, right, so I can slip into Bordeaux and then build a unit here. And it's going to be a tenuous position from there, because I will be surrounded by enemies, kind of, but at least there won't be a unit in Aquitaine, there won't be anything in Normandy or Orleans, so these units, and like, because the Parisian unit is stuck all the way over here, I think I'll have some opportunity to like find an ally and start making an advance. Even though I really do like Bordeaux and Paris, like both of them I've been working very solidly with now, even though Paris did help eject me from my homeland at the start, I am like very... I'm looking out for myself first and foremost. And this is something you have to do in diplomacy, right? You have to be willing to ditch an ally in order to get yourself ahead if that is the only option available to you. And also, I had made quite good friends with Azores at this point, because we talked about us both being basically refugees. So I thought, at least I have a friend up there. And I think I had something of a friend in Wessex as well, because we'd had that like quite good chat after I ended up in English Channel. He offered to support me to Plymouth. So I have friends around that I can try and explore possibilities with. First step is going to be getting a second supply center. So I want these guys focused down here. I say, hey Paris, I'm going to enter a support to you for you to Coruna, right? I want you, like, I want the possibility open for you to go there and bounce that supported move, but you can also just bounce Corsica out of Barcelona if you prefer. And I was really hoping they would bounce the Coruna move, because then I don't have a fleet to deal with here. But I was kind of fine with it going either way, right? For one, Rabat has been kind of... how do I... like, kind of unpredictable in their approach so far, so I thought there was some possibility that they're also maybe doing something like going for Canaries here or whatever.
Rabat has been so predictable. Okay.
Okay.
Rabat has told you what they're doing most of the time, and the times that they haven't told you what they were doing, they were making whatever moves they could to get dots. Rabat was playing the most C dot take dot ever.
Okay, so the word isn't necessarily unpredictable, it's like
unreliable.
Yes, exactly. So I don't think they're necessarily sticking to the Morocco alliance, which gives me a little bit of extra wiggle room if it happens, right? That would be quite helpful. So yeah, that's my goal at the moment. I am focused entirely on this one supply center, but at the same time I'm negotiating as if I'm focused on this entire region, because that is what my alliance is focused on. And I don't want to make it obvious that I'm stabbing them right now. At the same time, I don't particularly want Luxembourg to like come in and take Paris, because I don't have good relations with Luxembourg at all. So at this point, I was mainly trying to fix the relationship break that happened last turn because of the Frenchiest fries, and try and form something solid here. I think at this point, no, we don't name it that at this point, but like we're basically the French alliance. Strasbourg doesn't end up replying, but Luxembourg does accept their place in the French alliance when we offer it. And then they're oddly coy about what they're doing, apart from saying that they're not going after Paris. So I look at what they're saying and I think, well, there's an open centre right here, right? And Luxembourg quite likes centres, we've established this. So I have a feeling they might just go for Amsterdam, which again leaves me a turn to grab Bordeaux and try and solidify my position over here. So that was basically everything that was going on this front at this point. Yeah, I wasn't really following the internal wheel politics, but I think at this point, like, Nuremberg is not technically a wheel member anymore because they
No,
just
Nuremberg
stabbed,
stabbed.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So the official wheel members in the wheel are Freiburg and Vienna, and that's it. I don't actually know
I
if
think
this is the original
Strasbourg
Vienna.
and Luxembourg are still wheel. Oh, of the like original
Oh,
OG,
yeah,
like
yeah.
actual wheel.
As in the internal
Yeah.
wheel, because at this point the wheel
Yeah.
alliance is kind of disintegrated, and these guys have called themselves the Northern Wheel. The people over here.
They're in
So,
the West.
well, they're
Whatever.
also
They can call it whatever name they want.
they're also north of the wheel, right? Kind
Sure.
of, apart from Strasbourg, maybe. But they're the Northern Wheel. They're like their own kind of breakaway alliance at this point. They're still friendly with the other Wheel members, but they see the actual Wheel alliance as having completely collapsed at this point. So they wanted to have something that solidified them together, which ends up being like the whole Northern Wheel thing. Spoilers alert, that might not last very long. So yeah, the situation over here is that Trieste and Rome are going to try and make progress against basically Freiburg and Vienna. And then you've got Nuremberg, who is working with Wilno in this area. And Strasbourg is hard aligned with Luxembourg, who is technically aligned with Kiel. And Strasbourg is also friends with Freiburg, so they may be coming south to try and deal with this.
Yeah, very, very good friends with Freiburg.
Yes. With Freiburg and Luxembourg, really, they have been really solid friends throughout the game. You will have noticed last turn they gave up a dot, essentially just to bounce with Luxembourg and Ghent.
Two dots.
Yeah.
They declined 2 dots to instead bounce Luxembourg. Luxembourg could have been on 1 center, but Strasbourg said, nope, I'd rather they were on 3 centers and I were on 1.
Mm-hmm. And there was a deal at this point for Strasbourg to take a second dot, right? But it was a deal primarily negotiated between people who weren't Strasbourg. Like, it was, I think, something that Luxembourg had offered, basically saying, hey, you can get back up to 2. And I think Paris was in favor of it, and maybe Freiburg had negotiated with it, I don't know. But then at some point in this phase, Luxembourg says, hey, Strasbourg, actually you need to be going south to deal with these people. And I kind of went, hang on, isn't Strasbourg supposed to be keeping a unit adjacent to Luxembourg? And Freiburg went, no, we need the unit south. So at that point, Luxembourg gets out of giving the extra dot over to Strasbourg, and I think they're very happy about that. So, yeah. Do you want to talk about anything more? Like, I don't know what was going on with the British Alliance at this point. I think this may have been a turn where they were actually...
So, Oxford at this point, London, sorry, the course now in Oxford, has expressed being really pissed with the rest of the Great British Alliance. And it's like, hey, why do these people stab all the time? This is unbelievable. What are they doing? It doesn't make any sense. I just want some people I can work with.
Mm-hmm.
Trust me, I understand. And so us Vikings, who have been the pinnacle of stability and reliability...
Apart from...
please pay no attention to the stabs. We're happy to work with you. Wessex, come on in. You're in the North Sea. We have Oslo that we don't like. We'll work with you to help you take out Oslo. So, if in the fall you find yourself still in the North Sea, we'll support you into Bergen, probably. And Wessex was like, great, what a nice deal. We'll see how that goes. Meanwhile, they have to deal with Azores, because Azores is in Plymouth. And we're also trying to get, like, I'm hoping that I can get Azores, because I was talking to Azores. I got them up into the English channel to help mess with the GBA. But, like, they're not a full Viking yet. I can't do anything. I want to see Edinburgh, Wessex, and Azores just finish off Oxford and Ireland. Please, there's only 2 centers left to take. They're done. But they don't want to do that, and they're like worried about this fleet that Luxembourg has in Ghent, and they're worried about Kiel being in Amsterdam, and like they're not doing anything. And also Oxford wants to work with London still, and London wants to play both sides, I guess. And like, ugh, so it doesn't go that way. And honestly, it's probably a good thing that we didn't have all of them in the alliance, because the Vikings at this point are trying to get everyone out of three centers, and it's a pretty good pitch to say, hey, I can get you guys to three centers, and here's the actual path. Here are the three centers you will have. And with Azores and Dublin, sorry, Azores and Edinburgh and London, there's not enough centers actually to get them all on three. So someone has to get cut, and if it's someone that I don't have to like cut out myself, that's great. But I'm still hoping that the three of them can just work together, and then we can kill the other two GBA members, because they just actually can't do anything anymore. But it's fine. That doesn't quite happen. That's GBA in a nutshell.
So the important thing is that basically Wessex/London has been offered Viking membership at this point to go and attack Bergen.
Yes.
Yeah. So everything else here is still chaos. Poor old Azores has gone from being in Elm, which was one form of hell, to being in Britain, which is the other.
Yeah, Plymouth has been a death spot this game. Plymouth has changed hands every turn, I think, which is very exciting for a center.
Yeah.
Yes, one other thing is that tactically we're still trying to get Rostock and Bremen. We're trying to take these centers with Kiel and Copenhagen, but obviously it's kind of a pain. Oh, I remember! I got Copenhagen! I got Utrecht to support me from Baltic Sea into Scania to make sure that move happened. That's great.
Righto. Yeah. Utrecht is part of the Vikings now, probably.
Yes.
Right?
And once I committed to taking Gothenburg, I did want to get that support in there. As I'm thinking about it, I probably shouldn't have done that. I probably should have been really happy to get bounced out of Scania, because then I could have had the excuse to move west, and then still could have killed Finland in the fall. But, oh well.
Yeah, hindsight is hindsight, right? It's,
Yeah. Oh well.
Okay.
I can take Gothenburg, right? And I can take Gothenburg whilst being in a solid alliance still, with a bunch of people who love to work with me and are going to work with me for a while. Isn't that great?
Yes. Should be noted, if you do stab Finland and go up to 5 here, I think you might end up putting a bit of a target on your back.
Finland is taking Wilno from me in every universe, because they don't want me to go on 4. When Finland is only on 2. So since I'm taking Gothenburg as part of these agreements, Finland takes Wilno.
Ah, right. Okay.
Well, since Finland is already taking Wilno, why don't I just take Umeå and Helsingfors? It's not like he's gonna hit me anymore. But I digress.
Yeah.
Either way, it's fine. It's fine. I'm taking Gothenburg. I could have probably stabbed here. This was the year that I think I had my best bet. To just go ham, and then it would have been so satisfying to just kill Arkhangelsk. It would have been so nice. Anyways, I didn't go for it. See, guys, I don't always stab. I saw 2 dots. Do you see Stockholm and Baltic Sea next to Umeå? Do you see that, guys? Look at me not taking those dots. You see Gothenburg that I sat next to for a while, and I waited until my ally stabs for me to take the dots? Look at that. I can, in fact, resist my dark urge sometimes.
You've been playing Baldur's Gate, right? Yeah.
Baldur's Gate. No, I'm not.
I was playing Dark Urge in my last playthrough, and I got the worst possible ending with it, which is fantastic. Okay, anyway.
Oh, correct.
That is not related to this game. So, the takeaway from this game should clearly be you should always trust Ezio every time.
That is the takeaway from this game. Leave your home centers adjacent, open, vacant, move your units far away, and then don't do anything, right? Just look at this. It's great.
Shall we move on to the next phase?
Yes.
Okay, so, the reveal of the moves. Importantly for me, I did issue the support to Coruna, right? For the Parisian unit, but it goes and bounces the Corsican unit out of Barcelona instead. So poor old Corsica was about to get the dream happen of building an army on an island at the start of a Chaos game and still somehow getting a second center. And for one, it's actually the unit whose center it is that's convoying this. It's incredible. But it gets bounced out, killing the dream. Very sad for them.
Paris bounces that?
Yep.
Oh my god.
So Paris chooses to bounce that instead of Coruna, which makes me sad. I see 2 things that make me kind of sad. I see Kiel move into the English Channel here, right?
Heal reminder is Salt.
Kiel is
Salt doesn't
Salt.
like Captain Meme.
Salt has been, if you've forgotten from the first couple episodes, they were trying to get me killed for the entirety of the game. And Rabat moves into the Iberian Current. And now I have a bit of a friendly relationship with Rabat at this point, but also it's only friendly because it's like been bantery, right? It has also been a lot of me saying, hey, they're a stabby bastard, you should be killing the stabby bastard. And I was saying that in a jokey way, but it does still it does still hold the meaning of you should be killing the stabby bastard, right? So I'm a bit nervous seeing both of these moves happen, and I'm thinking, oh, okay, well, maybe I can get them both to bounce in Nantes and go to Bordeaux, but that feels quite risky. If I end up with a fleet in Bordeaux, right, and someone else takes Nantes, Nantes. I of course I'm gonna forget to say that for the entire thing. If I end up with a fleet in Bordeaux here, Fleet Bordeaux is a really useless unit, right? It can only go to Nantes, it can go to Aquitaine, and it can go to Bay of Biscay. And Bay of Biscay is adjacent to no supply centres except for Nantes. Aquitaine is adjacent to and Bordeaux. Aquitaine is adjacent to no supply centres except for Bordeaux, so it's not a nice place to have a fleet. Basically, if I go in here and someone else takes Nantes, the rest of my game is going to be concerned with trying to get Nantes back, and I will have pissed off the person who is right next to me here. So my priority then goes back to, okay, maybe this year I'm going to have to protect Nantes instead. Well, Nantes instead. Oh my god.
Good luck.
So, you'll notice over here the Italians try advancing in some ways. They actually get Tunis on side, but because they're having to discuss what they're doing here, right? The Spanish manage to counter them, and in fact the Spanish make pretty good guesses here. They bounce Cairo out of Tyrrhenian Sea. They don't bother covering Baleares, even though it could have been taken. And so the only progress the Italians actually make is getting Sicily into Sardinia, which doesn't change the situation very much over here. So, unlike on this front here, they are actually making a bit of progress. Rome tries to move up. They saw that Freiburg asked Strasbourg to go to Switzerland, so they move in a bit of a slower way to get position on Switzerland. But Strasbourg doesn't actually take that support. They just stay there and hold Freiburg. So it does actually just spook the Italians into slowing themselves down a bit. Trieste is trying to support Nuremberg into Vienna. And if Nuremberg had taken this support, would very possibly have killed Vienna going forwards, right? In this year, because they would have had to retreat somewhere and then try and frantically get a center. But Nuremberg goes the other way instead. They take Nuremberg back, and they get their ally. Well, their ally just follows them in and takes Prague behind them. It should be noted this is a spring phase, so they're not actually taking these centers yet, but they are getting positioned too. So the wheel is still in kind of a chaotic mess. And Luxembourg goes for the stab on Salt, which was kind of what I was expecting them to do right here. I was very worried about the Luxembourg unit going for Paris as well, but it doesn't. It goes the other way, so I'm quite happy to see that. And Salt actually says in the next phase he ordered this unit to English Channel because Luxembourg started being oddly evasive with their answers on what they were going to do. So he figured he was going to die no matter what, so
nobody
he wanted to come
could
over
have
and kill
predicted that he was gonna try to take the open dot next to him.
Yes.
Nobody.
Alright, so moves over here. Do you want to discuss what's going on?
Well, pretty much everything that I thought was going to happen happened. Which was quite nice, actually. The guesswork with Oslo. I think Oslo holding in Bergen was pretty smart. As opposed to like going to Vestland, which is what I kind of thought was gonna happen. But just tapping Trondheim from Norwegian Sea like this was really good. This is of course a downside to having to negotiate everything in public press and like telling other people what their orders are, is it makes it very clear what's going on, and so if anyone has even a shred of tactical sense, they just tear it apart. Um, and so you really need to have overwhelming force to make things work. The good news is that we have a lot of force, and so I'm taking Gothenburg here, and Oslo is not building, so we're great. And if Wessex is on board with our plan of attacking Bergen, Oslo is going to support that. So Oslo might go down to 1 or 2 centers this year, depending on how crazy things go. With Stockholm, I have a fun. Actually, sorry, we're analyze the previous one. Yes. So things go well up here, and then King of Prussia in Krakow and Brandenburg has a ton of work to do to try to stay alive. We managed to get Kiel to tap Rostock, so Brandenburg was actually safe this turn by Krakow supporting it to Gdansk. And remember, I'm not giving tactics to King of Prussia. I am forcing King of Prussia needs to make his own moves because he's reading the Commonwealth close to deadline and reacting to what they're doing, and he needs to have the flexibility to do that. So he's not doing what I say. We're not letting that get blown up.
Mm-hmm.
I end up in Courland, and Finland gets into Wilno and is still in Smolensk, and Moldavia from the HBE is in Kiev.
Well,
So
actually, I
now
think this is Wallachia, but yeah,
Wallachia,
they
whatever,
are
dude.
now in Kiev.
That color teal is in Kiev. And I think actually I was wrong. I think it's technically this phase that cooler Finland takes over. Um,
Okay.
but either one of the two. It was in this phase or the next phase. And so here, right, you can see we've got tons of pressure on Warsaw with 3 units if we can work with Wallachia, apparently. And with my fleet in Courland, I can tap Prussia, so Gdansk is probably safe. Like this, things are going really well. Sadly, you can see Gdansk doesn't get blown up; it retreats to Warsaw. So
It's
sadly,
another
it's not the
wheel.
easiest in the world.
The Commonwealth of the King of the
Yeah. Well,
Wheels.
this one's a triangle, but yeah,
Okay, yes. It's a triangular shaped wheel. I'm sure nothing
yeah,
will
it's
go
the
wrong with
worst
that.
wheel shape.
I'm sure it's not the worst wheel shape. I'm sure you can find something worse.
Okay, a flat wheel.
Yeah,
Right, that's the worst wheel.
that is significantly worse. Just a line, but yes,
Yeah.
it's a triangle. Gdansk is going to retreat into Warsaw. This is, of course, the second wheel that the Commonwealth and Prussia have been involved
Yeah,
in.
the first one was a real wheel. Honestly,
Well,
there should be the
it was a
actual wheel.
square, right?
Yeah,
Does
that's a
that
wheel.
count as a wheel?
Yes,
To be fair, the actual wheel is what, an octagon,
an octagon. Yeah.
which also isn't a wheel, but it's getting a bit closer. So, an important thing here, right? So the situation as it stands, the Commonwealth is now in Prussia. They're going to retreat to Warsaw, and they're in Krakow, right? And you also have the Northern Germans, so Bremen and Rostock, working against you as well. So it is basically King of Prussia versus King of Prussia, your unit in Courland, and the Finnish unit in Wilno, and maybe the Wallachia unit in Kiev against these 5 units here. So Bremen, Rostock, Prussia, Warsaw, and Krakow. So that feels like a bit of a sticky situation to the poor guy who's stuck in the middle, right?
Yeah, man, good thing that's not me.
Yep, you chose a nice nation being in the center of your alliance instead of on the outskirts.
You could also say that I made a good alliance around me, and they could have made a better alliance with historical nations in Poland.
I mean, they did, right? They were initially part of the Commonwealth as well.
Oh,
It was
yeah.
just
No, my
being
joke is that there's no like what is a historical alliance in the Polish region that is bigger than
oh
Poland
that
that you
that
could have said,
yeah.
right?
I mean, they could have
Because
just.
yeah,
I guess Prussia was never part of the Poland-Lithuanian Commonwealth. How many of these actually are parts of the Poland-Lithuanian Commonwealth? It's an interesting
I
question.
have absolutely no idea. I didn't take my history stuff, and I wasn't expecting historical nations to were going to be a real part of this game.
Yep.
But it really does like the countries modern day have formed so much of these alliances in game. It's absurd.
apart from the wheel, which is just wheeling.
The
Although they are
HRE.
kind of, yeah, they're more or less all in the HRE, right?
Yeah, plus when they got like Bremen and Brandenburg and Strasbourg and Luxembourg and Northern Italy, like it was just so much the HRE.
Yes, that is true. And I mean, my alliance right now is just France. I mean, technically it includes Luxembourg as well, right? But it's mostly just France. So, yeah. Oh man, you even got Portugal is controlled by one nation as well here, even though it's not an original Portuguese nation. It's someone who's completed the reverse Reconquista, which
Yeah.
I suppose is just a conquista. I
Yeah, but
yeah.
the Reconquista was talking about a very specific time in history, and I don't think we need to worry too much about it.
Okay. Yes. Anyway, we're discussing far too much. There is a completely invalid move going all the way across the map here of Cairo just deciding to support Edinburgh into Astrakhan. If you've forgotten, these invalid moves just get drawn by the GM, even though they're completely irrelevant and invalid. At some point, he's going to stop drawing them, and I will be a bit thankful as a commentator because I won't need to talk about them. But the an important one is Archangelisk is still wishing for that world convoy and ordering an invalid move into Levant. Will not
I
give up
think
that
this is the
idea.
last phase that we see these orders on the map. I think at this point, Flare is annoyed about them and decides to stop drawing them.
Yep. Oh, so a super interesting move as well here is Croatia going to Banat, right? I wonder why that was. That's something I would love clarification on if anyone from that region is in the comments. Because
The HPE spends like 80% of their moves stopping other HPE members from growing. And I think they were worried about Constantinople stabbing somebody here. And so you need to be in Banat to pressure Constantinople because like, oh, what if Constantinople like holds in Moldavia and like moves to Smyrna or something? We want to have a unit in Banat to make sure they don't do anything.
right, I guess that makes sense. I thought that Sarajevo was like very concerned with what was going on over here and was going to get involved, but I guess they just pieced out here.
Yeah, they decided that they didn't actually need to do anything to get their desired objective, I think. So, um, they just backed out and then it's fine.
Yes. Okay. And of course, we haven't talked about Britain. Everyone's just fighting each other. Iceland and Ireland just. Well, this is Ireland and this is Scotland, I guess, Edinburgh. Just bouncing themselves out of each other because really this is the logical move set, right? Ireland can't move out of Iceland Basin to anywhere else because Edinburgh might get in and then attack Reykjavik. So you just attack here to pin them in, and for the same reason, Edinburgh can't really go anywhere else because if they try and get to Reykjavik, for example, Ireland can get into Dublin, and then you might get bounced out of here by someone else. So they're just going to be doing the obvious moves here. And Oxford is moving down to Wales, so this is kind of important. I feel like there was some negotiation between Wessex and Oxford here to knock out the non-British person, because of course the one thing that the Brits can agree on is that no one who's non-British should be in Britain. That's unfortunately a very
And
realistic
Wessex
tone right now.
simultaneously agrees that they like want to work with the Vikings and they've said they're going to take Bergen and fall, but also want to work with Oxford here because they're trying to do both. And I think this causes Wessex a huge headache in the later this phase. And I think their life would be much easier because they've agreed to support Oxford and the Plymouth, and we'll see what happens. Actually, we can talk about that in the fall. I think is a good time to talk
Yeah,
about that.
in the clean map, I guess.
Yeah, oh, sorry. Yeah, another important move to notice is that stupid Novgorod army that's doing the invalid support. Yeah, that's the one that held instead of like moving to Kursk, for example.
Right. Yeah.
And like, look at how much better that unit is in Kursk. It like messes with Kiev if we're trying to take Kiev. It messes with Bakhchisaray if we want to do that, and opens the door to moving into Poltavia and like really ripping out the HBE's heart. But no, it just sits there holding in Novgorod because it needs to be 2 turns away from Narva because you always want to be able to walk into Pskov and take Narva. That option has to be available.
Well, yeah, also because you guys are working with the HBE here as well, right? So you have
I
this
mean,
little agreement
yeah,
to potentially work against Commonwealth, and you also have this agreement to. This move here, I think, was agreed with HBE to try and keep
yeah.
pressure on Golden Horde. And so Golden Horde is doing as best as they possibly can to defend themselves here. Like, this is an interesting thing in diplomacy, which is where if you have perfect information about your opponent's moves, you can pretty consistently counter everything they're doing until they have overwhelming force around you, right? Which is exactly what they're trying to get here. They're moving an extra fleet in, they're going to have army, like fleet. And Golden Horde moves from Georgia with support from Dagestan, just in case Aleppo taps Georgia, right? In which case, a support hold would be bad, or a support the other way would be bad. But they are going to get overwhelmed if all of these units manage to get around them. Information only helps you so much. It does help you a
Public
lot.
press is a pain.
Yeah. All right. So I think that's about like we've discussed pretty much everywhere on the map. To be honest, at this point, is there anything else you want to talk about before we move on to clean map?
Nah, let's go to clean map.
All right, clean map time. So we don't have any retreats here, right? No, we do. Oh, of course, the Gdansk retreat. I don't even know what this pink power was at the start of the game. Like, these countries have moved around so much. I think it might have been Warsaw, and this one is Krakow, in which case they're back in their original locations now.
Yep.
Okay. So, do you want to talk about what's going on in your region?
I've talked about most of it. So again, we have the rest of the Vikings coordinating to eliminate Oslo, and we are trying to get Wessex to tap Bergen, and we're offering support in there. Technically, with Stockholm, I have an interesting little position here. So, if I want to guarantee Gothenburg, I should support myself into Gothenburg. Right, and I can take Gothenburg from Scania. Now, because I can support myself into Gothenburg to guarantee the center, it is really, really unlikely that Oslo tries to defend Gothenburg because I'm going to support myself in there, which means that Stockholm is very probably free to do something else. Um, what else do you think Stockholm could do this phase, Captain Mew?
I mean, it could go to
It could go to Umiya. Wow, look at that. Yeah, man, wouldn't that be juicy? But probably Oslo is getting dislodged this turn. So
Yes.
what would then Oslo do if I walk into Umiya?
It would retreat into Stockholm, because that's the only
Oh,
available dot next to it.
really? You don't think I could convince him to disband it instead of taking the dot after I stabbed the alliance? I think you're right, unfortunately. So Stockholm, though, it is free to support hold Oslo, which is Trondheim in Oslo right here. Um, which is a pretty interesting position to have. It means that if Oslo tries to support Bergen into Oslo, they would just get absolutely annihilated. It would be really great. Um, but in my position, I don't really want Trondheim to have Oslo because you see, with my fleet and Scania taking Gothenburg, I want that unit to move into Skagerrak, and then I want to take Oslo. So
You want the
I
excuse.
hear what?
You want the
What?
excuse of Oslo having Oslo so that you can. Yeah.
Yeah, Oslo's not a Viking, but Trondheim is a Viking, and so if Trondheim takes Oslo, I can't take Oslo. But if Oslo has Oslo, then I can take it, and then we'll still be okay.
Yep. Alright.
So also, I also do want to guarantee Gothenburg because there is a chance that Oslo just taps lots of things here. instead of supporting themselves into Oslo. And that would be really bad for me if that happened. So I want to make sure that I take it. So just being guaranteed staying on 3 is wonderful. I don't really want to be on 4 here because nobody else is on 4. So I think 4 is going to be leading the game, and that's an annoying place to be. Um,
Yeah, fair enough.
yeah, I don't really want to be on 4. Um, cool. Other negotiations that end up happening. It turns out that Finland has negotiated support into Warsaw from Wilno.
Ooh, interesting. So,
And I assume they're gonna take Wilno as well, with from Smolensk. And so then Finland's gonna be on 4. And that is a little scary, because if Finland builds in Umeå and Helsingfors, that's not great, for me. But it should be fine, right? Um, but either way, that's a big thing that happened. The other main negotiation that's happened with the Vikings is that we got Luxembourg to want to be in the Vikings. Uh, so, uh, yes, excellent.
that's a lot of
So,
things to say.
yes, so Wessex joining the Vikings made Luxembourg see, wait a second, hold up. So, Wessex plus the North Sea and Azores are all going to be in the Vikings. That's tons of naval pressure. Um, and I think Luxembourg recognized they were going to be on 4 centers, and I think they thought that if they were alone and on 4 centers, which is going to be board leading, they would get targeted and crushed. So they thought by joining the Vikings, that would make people afraid of targeting them by virtue of if you target one Viking, you target all the Vikings. And so we would enact justice upon those who tried to target Luxembourg, and so they could hide behind the Vikings thing. Um, is why they wanted to join. I wanted them to join because they would support Kiel and Bremen.
That's a simpler reason, I suppose.
Yeah, that's it. I wanted their support right this phase, and I wanted absolutely nothing else from Luxembourg.
A quick
Really?
reminder that Bremen is the current Bumble Pope, which, if this
Oh
happens, will
God,
be
yes.
the
Yeah. Oh
third
yeah,
Bumble Pope
that's
eliminated by the Vikings.
yeah, absolutely. And so making this one happen would be wonderful. Um, they've lasted a year. Yeah, they
Yeah,
lasted a year.
they have, like, Bremen has been the most successful Bumble Pope in the fact that they have survived a year and a half, which is as the
As
Bumble
the
Pope,
Bumble Pope.
which
Yeah.
is longer than any other Bumble Pope has lived for so far. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I was really hoping they were going to pick Edinburgh next. But yes, anyways, Luxembourg agrees to support Kiel into Bremen. And now I'm expecting Rostock to like tap Kiel here. Because then Rostock doesn't get anything. So I also have Copenhagen tap Rostock. And here, right, I'm scared that Skagerrak sees what's going on, and then Skagerrak's gonna attack Copenhagen, and like it's all gonna go to,
it's gonna be a
and it's
Congo
gonna get
line.
wrecked, and it's going to be a Congo line, yeah. Um, but like Congo line have a bunch of centers changing hands, and actually, okay, if that specific moveset happened, I would have been really happy because I would be gaining a lot from this.
Because then you would have
But
said, "Oh, I can take Copenhagen."
you take Copenhagen now, not Oslo. Man, how inconvenient. God. Yeah, so stuff like that. But either way, Oslo's here. We have a bunch of negotiations. Again, I can't give any advice to King of Prussia because his tactics are so last minute and he's a good tactical player. He can figure it out. So he knows that I am tapping Prussia from Courland because I'm pretty sure I am actually tapping Prussia from Courland.
Yeah,
Don't quote me on that, but like, what else is Courland ever doing?
I will quote you on that if you don't do that.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, is it moving to Gulf of Gdansk? It'd be really funny if it moved to Gulf of Gdansk here, but that'd be terrible because we're in Gdansk. No, I'm sure I'm tapping Prussia here. No other move does anything.
Righto. So, I
All
mean, you
right,
could
great.
also tap Will, though, to make sure that Finland doesn't get both of these.
I could do that.
Does
Maybe
that...
I don't want to be on 4 though. I don't think being a 4 is a good thing here. Besides, I actually want to keep King of Prussia alive. I like those armies. I think the Commonwealth is about to get cleaned up, right? They're only on 3 units. You've got tons of hostile units around them, and like even with Rostock joining, it's not the end of the world. Um, and yeah, I don't know. I think it's gonna be okay. And with me tapping Prussia, it seems pretty difficult for things to go too poorly to with King of Prussia. I think if they like double tap Krakow, things are fine for them because like Warsaw's getting cut, Russia's getting cut, Rostock's getting cut, and so Krakow's getting cut. Yeah, so I think King of Prussia would be guaranteed to stay on 2 if they double tap Krakow.
Yeah.
Because every other support is getting cut here, from other sources. Yeah, so I don't know. I was assuming something like that was coming in. So I think things are going great. So Commonwealth is about to get exploded, and Prussia is going to be a great mainland ally. We'll probably get him back into Prussia at some point, and then yeah, we'll be doing great.
All right.
Bremen's locked in, Rostock's locked in, Wessex is probably on board. The rest of yeah, Wessex has agreed to support Oxford into Plymouth.
Yep.
Sure, whatever.
Poor Azores. I
Poor
do want to
Azores.
take the moment to again plug Azores' charts of the game, which you shouldn't look at if you want no spoilers for the thing, but they are pretty awesome, so they will be in the description below. Azores
Yes.
was like documenting everything that was going on in terms of the amount of messages and like the amount of centers people had at various points and whatnot. And so I guess they're a traveling historian at this point. But they
Yeah.
are about to get murdered by the Great British Alliance.
Yeah.
Minor spoilers there, but that is, yeah,
Yeah.
it's not a major
Purpose
spoiler.
Yeah, the second person I was saddest to see go. On second saddest I was to see a person go. There we go.
After,
Helsingfors.
hmm,
Dude, Helsingfors was so nice. I cannot stress how nice it was to have Helsingfors reading all of the press
yep,
everywhere on the map and reading Elm Hall and seeing what was going on in there. It was so good.
yes, and so you were out there crying after stabbing a knife into them.
I maintained that I thought that there was a good chance that they understood the message with aye.
Excuse me, no, you cannot keep this this up. You have admitted to your crimes in the first
I've admitted
episode of
that
the
that was
series.
unlikely, but like unlikely, what percentage does it have to be for it to be a stab? At some point.
It was a stab. This is
Yeah, fine, but I was sad to see them go. It broke me up inside to do it.
okay. Anyway, are you done talking about your region then?
Yeah, my region, that is the entire northern half of the map.
Yep. And meanwhile, I will go back to my region, which is not.
Yep.
This is, oh, you will notice that Madrid now has a shark. They managed to get their unit rotated again,
That's
and
a
they
shark.
decided
I thought it was a piranha.
to. I think it's a shark. They called it a shark during the
Oh.
game,
Well,
so
shark makes
yep,
sense.
that is a shark. And this, if you remember from the very first episode where Ezio said something about fish, and I said the fish don't exist yet, this is the first sign of the fish. But they still don't come about for a little while yet, so we will talk about them later. More importantly to me, also I've stuck the Ghentian lion on here, which was a symbol I found for the flag of Ghent that I'm not sure is historically accurate. It was just what I got when I googled Ghent flag, but it looked kind of cool, so I stuck it on the unit here, and that will stay there for the rest of the game.
I knew what my unit
yeah.
flag was going to be. Thanks for reminding me. It was going to be the Swedish flag.
Oh, but you didn't want it until you'd formed Sweden?
Couldn't do it until I formed Sweden, because that would tell everyone what was happening. And I suspect it would make Umia uncomfortable if I say, hey, I have to form Sweden, I have to take your center.
Alright. Anyway, I am stuck here in Bay of Biscay. I have my arch nemesis Salt in the English channel, and it should be noted here, Salt has kind of checked out of the game to some extent, right? He didn't message anyone really the turn before, even to convince people to attack me. He was just not there, for once. And he moved into English Channel, and this turn he did say, I moved into English Channel because I was getting bad vibes from Luxembourg. They weren't, they were pretty obviously going to attack me. But he didn't do much in trying to convince Luxembourg not to do that, right? He just decided, I'm dead. I'm just going to go and screw with Ghent because he is my arch nemesis. So he runs over to the English Channel, and the very first thing he says this turn is, "Hey, Rabat, you're an Iberian current. Can you support me to Nantes?" Well, to Nantes. I will get that word right someday. And then he basically says, "Hey, then you'll have a friend in France. Your alliance will have a friend in France. I can help out Morocco, right? And help attack other people." And it seems like a pretty decent deal for them. And the first thing Rabat says in response is, "Yeah, that sounds like a great idea." And then I come along and go, "Wait, what? That's not what I want to hear." Right? And Rabat mentions, hey, this basically forces Ghent to go into Bordeaux and stab their ally, right? Because that's what they have to do in order to survive from this situation. And that, again, makes France crumble. And at this point, I'm looking at the situation here. Regardless of whether I'm intending to go into Bordeaux or not, I certainly don't want to say that I'm going into Bordeaux, right? Because if Bordeaux comes back, I will then just bounce out and die if they're being supported into Nantes. So I make a very big point of saying, no, Bordeaux helped me into Nantes. I would never attack them, right? If you guys are attacking and killing me in Nantes, then I will die. And that is fine, but I am dying for my friends. I am very solidly with my friends in this game. But then I go ahead and say to Rabat, this is not a good idea for you. You can have a friend in me as well, and I can be this kind of friend to you, like that I'm being to Bordeaux. And I am totally being friends to Bordeaux. I'm not considering taking Bordeaux at all, right? In reality, if they had supported, if this had 100% been what they are going to do, English Channel going into Nantes into Nantes with Iberian current support, yes, I would go to Bordeaux. I think it's kind of a death sentence, because as mentioned, the fleet here is really, really bad, and I would annoy my ally, and I'd then have Salt next to me. But at least I'd be alive, and that's an important thing. But I was making a big point of, no, I'm not going to Bordeaux under any circumstances. Then I go and message Rabat in the other chat, and basically, I try and hide this in Elm, because I know that Salt has kind of checked out of the game. His one thing is kill me, right? So he negotiated to make that happen, and now that he's seemingly made that happen, he has kind of stopped negotiating. So I go into Elm Hall, which is, again, full of people talking about everything, and so Salt is never going to see. And then I start talking to Rabat and say, hey, you can agree to this deal with Salt, this is fine, but just don't actually do it, please. If you can, for example, if you can bounce him in Nantes, in Nantes, I can maybe have the opportunity to help you. And I was confident saying that kind of thing because I knew that Bordeaux also didn't really read Elm Chat. But I was trying to hint at the fact, hey, if you really want me to stab France, I can absolutely go to Bordeaux, right? I can absolutely do this kind of thing as long as you don't kill me. I'll work with you, just be my friend here. And they actually don't see my message for a while, and then even after they see my message, they're still but Salt is a really great ally, potentially here, right? We know that he won't work with France, so he can be our friend. And they...
Bot understands.
Yeah. They spend a lot of time saying that kind of thing and making me feel like I'm going to die, right? To the point that at some point I put in the order Bay of Biscay to Bordeaux, because I think that is the only way I'm going to live, right? But at some point, the potential comes up. I start talking to Marrakesh, who is a very key part of this Morocco alliance, right? Marrakesh is basically the most talkative person here, and also seems very strategically astute from what my negotiations with him have been so far. And I can't remember who proposes this at first, but I I think it might have been me. I think Portugal was talking about maybe getting Coruna into Bay of Biscay to go against here, I think. And then I pick up on that and go, hey, how about instead of Iberian Current supporting Kiel into Nantes, right? And basically getting another fleet in there that you'll have to attack at some point anyway, because you're all fleets and therefore you are going to come over here and do your attack. How about you support a Coruna into Bay of Biscay? And I bounce Nantes. And then I can take Bay of Biscay off the board and rebuild an army in Nantes, and then you have a friend who can actually do something against people who aren't you, right? And it's very risky for me to say this because the people I can do stuff against are primarily Paris and Bordeaux, who are my allies. So, yeah. But Marrakesh really likes that idea and starts pushing Rabat to accept it. And Rabat kind of takes a while to agree, but eventually agrees, hey, yes, I'll push you out of Biscay. You can disband and rebuild in Nantes. Nantes. And I then I'm like, oh my god, hang on, have I actually pulled this off? Because Kiel Salt is not going to check this chat to see that this has happened, right? He's not. We also made very certain not to mention the words Kiel or Salt in our conversation, so even if he searches it, he won't find it. So I think he is definitely going to Nantes, not thinking he's got that support, and I will bounce him out. But more importantly, yes, I've said I'm going to disband Bay of Biscay. I'm not going to disband Bay of Biscay. I'm going to retreat it to Bordeaux if that's open. Because then I'm on 2 centres, right? And 2 centres is what I really want to be on here. And hopefully I'll have maybe flipped to being part of the Moroccan alliance, which means I have... The fleet here is still pretty useless. But I do at least have friends all around here, and hopefully they will work with me. And so we come to this agreement that this is happening, and the rest of the turn is just me trying to make sure that Bordeaux and Paris don't get spooked and turn around, right? So I'm fairly convinced they didn't spot what was being said in this, because it was in Elm Chat at a time that they weren't online, but I am, like, very... my whole thing is I do not want Marseille moving to Bordeaux. That is the one thing that I really want to avoid. So I keep discussing possibilities of attacking in this direction with them. And something really bad happens on this turn that interferes with that. In fact, actually, I need to talk about something that happened on the previous turn very briefly to give a little bit of context for this. But because, remember, Paris is part of the Wheel, and Bordeaux is part of the Italian alliance, right? At the end of the previous phase, Paris had come on and started talking to the Wheel members and said, hey, are we, like, pressing south? Are we doing something to attack the Italians here with my Dijon unit? Because that's what it can do. And Sardinia had seen this and just immediately gone, don't do anything stupid, Paris, how dare you do this, in kind of an aggressive way that made Paris really dislike him. And that took a lot of talking down to make sure that nothing aggressive actually happened there. But at this point, Paris doesn't like the Italians, right? And then on this phase, suddenly a very important thing comes in with the Italians, which is, yeah, they're making great progress up here, and yeah, they're making slow progress over here, right? But their back is kind of open, and the HBE has these fleets that aren't doing anything. And the HBE goes, well, what if those fleets could do something? I can't remember if it was because a specific member won the HBE election. I don't know if you have, you have any recollection of who won the election on this term?
I remember better next turn.
Okay.
Nope, I don't know which HB member. It's just the only moves, right? Like, what else are these fleets doing in Athens and Levantine Sea and stuff? Like,
yes.
come on.
Yeah. I don't even know why this fleet went to Levantine Sea in the first place. I assume it was... Well, it can't
Remember
even
when I
be
told
to
you?
support hold.
Remember when I told you what the HBE? What do 80% of their moves do?
They just stop other people from getting too big, yeah.
Stop other people from growing. So they looked at a thing and thought, ooh, there's a chance that Cairo gets on 3 dots or something, and we can't allow that. So if it looks like Cairo's getting to 3 dots, we need to snipe Cairo or something.
Yeah, fair enough. But then Athens, I remember Athens being like the big pusher of this, basically goes, hey, this is the time. Let's jump in, let's attack Italy. Because they're having all this problem with Spain over this side, right? They're going to be forced up here. They aren't even in Tyrrhenian Sea right now, so we could maybe have Cairo go into Sicily. And then, we're kind of set. Italy is really in a really bad position if the HBE attacks them right here. And there's a huge amount of negotiation from the Italians to try and stop this happening, right? But the vast majority of it is led by Sardinia, and Sardinia's press style is not really ideal for trying to convince something, like, trying to convince that not to happen. I'll be honest, I don't think anyone could have actually convinced the HBE not to attack here, for exactly the reason Ezio just said, right? These fleets can't do anything. They're kind of stuck until they find an attack opportunity, and this is their attack opportunity. But I think the majority of my void on this turn is just ranting about how badly the negotiations of this are being handled. Because the first thing that Sardinia tries to call upon to like stop this from happening is, I'm a really honest person, except for that one time where I was considering being dishonest. And he basically explains the entirety of a situation where he was planning to stab someone, right? But he didn't in the end. And then he says, so look at this situation. I didn't stab them, therefore I'm a very honest person. But in doing so, he talked through all of his thoughts of, like, why it would be a great idea to stab and what he was planning to do if he was gonna stab, to the point that it was...
yeah, but you understand, but because he saw how good of a stab it was, but he didn't stab anyways, that makes him more trustworthy.
Yeah. And so it was just like, that is not the approach you want to take if you want to convince someone that you're trustworthy. Do not ever talk about times that you were planning to stab someone and didn't, because you're just, like, saying how much you consider the stab. Go
Counterpoint, use that argument with me. That's a very convincing argument. You should use that with me all the time, because I will look at that position and say, Jesus, you didn't stab then? You're a loony. Absolutely be on my team. That's crazy. Depending on, if I have to agree with your analysis on the stab position. But, like, yeah, if you show me positions that, like, you had the greatest stab ever and you didn't stab, absolutely. That'll make me want to work with you. So pitch that to me, please. Thank you. Yep.
Well, when that doesn't work, Sardinia then pivots to, we signed this accord with the HBE that meant that we're both friends, right? If you stab us now, you'll be showing everyone that you can't be trusted. Which I think is generally a pretty good argument. But it's not a good argument here because no one, like, they're working with the entire HBE, right? They're discussing this situation with the entire HBE, and Athens, like, what do they have to worry about? Who else is gonna think, oh, you'll break your word with me? It's not the HBE, because the HBE are looking at this and going, oh, that's the only direction Athens can go without attacking us, so that's completely fine by us. Like, and Italy aren't part of our alliance, so that is a viable expansion route.
Yeah, right. Showing your allies, the people that you're working with, that you are willing to attack people who aren't your allies to grow is a good thing.
Yes, or who are not as good allies as they are. Basically, in the situations, Athens is going, I am more happy to move across an area that is, like, it actually takes me a little while to go and gain anything than I am to just walk into Constantinople. And that proves their loyalty to the HBE more than them just sitting in Athens ever could, right? Even though they are stabbing someone they made an agreement with, they're stabbing it for the benefit of their alliance in a sense.
Yeah.
So that argument doesn't really work either. And at this point, I was like, okay, well, this isn't technically something that I should be getting involved in, but I am kind of getting involved in it because I don't want the Italian front to like look like it's completely collapsing. Because if that's the case, what do these French units do? The only reason that they're pushed this hard up against the line is that they're waiting for Italian assistance to come in and help them break the stalemate, right?
Yep.
So if that Italian assistance is clearly not going to arrive, then Marseille comes back to Bordeaux.
Was it ever going to arrive? Did we ever think Italian assistance was arriving?
Well, I didn't think they were ever going to get to the line, but I wanted it to be like...
Yeah,
not,
you
not
wanted
apparent,
your
but,
allies
like...
to hold so you could stab them. I understand.
Well, yes, so
Trust
that
me,
I could
I
get
understand
my
that more
second
than
sector.
anything. Yeah, absolutely. Trust me, I understand.
So I really want the Italians to look like they're gonna be fine, right? So I then go and message Sardinia, hey, this is not how you need to negotiate with, well, I say message Sardinia, message publicly,
Yeah.
saying, hey, this is not how you want to negotiate. If you want to get the HBE off your back, you need to, like, offer them something, or... well, offer them something, basically.
Yeah.
Right? Say they're going to get Sicily, just say, hey, you can have Sicily, it's fine, and keep pushing this way. Try and make something work. Don't just rely on these arguments that aren't really gonna work. And he completely ignores me to the point that my void on this phase is just screaming about how he's ignoring me and not pitching anything that I thought would work. And as mentioned earlier, I didn't think anything would really work, but I wanted something to at least look like it might, right? And so at this point, like the Italian, this part of the Italian alliance basically completely collapses. They're all in complete chaos. Sicily is pretty much not there and is just planning to sit in Sardinia. Sardinia has nothing in either of the SCs here, right? This unit, I think, is in Milan, so that's kind of fine. But at some point, he gets so frustrated with it that he just goes, I'll sacrifice myself this turn. Like, I'm losing Sardinia anyway, how about... I really hope this is the turn that I'm thinking of, but I think he basically asks Rome to go and take Genoa from him so he doesn't have to play the game anymore. And this whole place is in utter chaos. And I'm just like there. Bordeaux hasn't logged on yet. And my only thing is, okay, well, I will pray that Bordeaux, when they log on, will not notice what is going on. And they don't speak for the rest of the turn. So I'm like, okay, maybe they haven't noticed. Maybe I'll get away with this. And so my plan ends up still being, hey, Coruna is getting supported into Bay... Oh, no, I think it's actually the other way around. Iberian is getting supported into Bay of Biscay by Coruna, which I think, like, as Rabat, I would not agree to that, but that is what they end up agreeing to. And I'm hoping I can retreat into Bordeaux, but I have an agreement to basically take Biscay off and rebuild it as an army in Nantes. And yeah, that's pretty much where it ends up. Oh, I think on this turn as well, Paris like swaps out. They get substituted for another person, and that person barely talks at all, which is a bit frustrating. But also
Par for the
not.
course with subs.
Yeah, it's also actually not that bad because, like, my position here doesn't matter. Like, if anything, I think it's a little bit better that the Paris came in who wasn't talking very much because I assume that meant they would just stick to the plan and therefore, you know, they hopefully wouldn't be paying as much attention to what's going on here with the Italian alliance. But it does also mean that my reputation with Paris has been completely demolished, right? Because the new players come in. Always a sad thing. with that, but it would have been demolished anyway when I retreated into Bordeaux, if I get to
Yeah,
retreat into Bordeaux.
but like again, having the whole sub comes in, doesn't talk, stabs the alliance. Wouldn't know anything about that, Captain Meme. How'd I? Not like that happened this turn.
um, is there anything else you want to talk about here?
Did we talk about Marrakesh in the south?
We haven't talked that much about outside of that. I was talking to them and making sure that they basically were the one who pushed heavily for Rabat to do this Bay of Biscay move, so that I could rebuild an army in Nantes. But yeah, we haven't talked about what exactly they were planning to do this turn, which I believe they had a plan to support Canary Basin into Canaries or to move into Canaries. It's one of the two.
I believe that was the agreement that they made with Rabat. I think it was to support Canary Basin into Canaries, but I'm not 100% about that.
Yeah, that is gonna be a little important here.
All right, let's see it.
So
Let's
yeah,
go see some moves. Oh, we're going so fast. Finally.
are we going so fast? We're in
Yeah, we're going so
16:45 and we're
fast.
2 hours in.
Yep, we've
Okay.
made it through a year, Captain Meme.
So, let's look at Marrakesh first because we've just talked about them. You'll note
Oh, I take it back.
they did not
He's
support.
still doing invalid supports on this move. My bad. Thought he
Yeah,
was
yeah.
done.
So Amsterdam supports Hold Canaries, right? But Marrakesh stabs Rabat. They go into Rabat with Tangier. They cover Marrakesh to stop Berbers from just walking in, right? And I should note, we have barely talked about them, but Tunis and Berbers are kind of still independent nations. They're still negotiating with everyone around them, but they're not, like, actually aligning with anyone. And they're not even on the same side, as you can see here. They tried to take Sardinia's support into Tunis, and Tunis managed to survive because they got their neighbours to support hold them. This was discussed in chat, so I assume this was too. And of course, offering support into Algeria to try and cut that here. But yeah, so Marrakesh stabs Rabat. So Rabat goes down to just having Azores, while still being in Bay of Biscay and Canary Basin, right? That is going to be quite relevant for the next turn. You will note a lot more people have signets? That's not the right word. Symbols on their units, including the smiley faces of Cairo, which I love. Sardinia ends up giving a salute as they go out, and Rome does indeed move into Genoa here. And
With the Roman Eagles, I believe.
yeah, I think so. And here, I am extremely sad to see this. Bordeaux wasn't here, right? At the end of the phase, they weren't talking, but they were watching. So they do go into Bordeaux to make sure that I can't go there. And so I get forced out of Bay of Biscay, and I have to disband and rebuild in Nantes. Very sad I'm not picking up my second supply centre, but there's still hope for the future, and I'm not dead, because Iberian Current didn't support Salt into Nantes. So that's something at least, right?
Yeah, you're still alive. You're alive and kicking.
I am, just about, still. But yeah, so we can see in the
You
British
could have
Isles.
disbanded and built an army.
Yes. Yeah, well, I do disband.
Yeah, of course, because you understand the value. Yeah. But then we see with negotiations. Oh, that's right. This was fun negotiations. All right. Cool. So continuing north from there, we do see that Wessex supports Wales into Plymouth.
Yep.
Yes.
Well, that's
Wales,
the Power
unit,
Oxford. It's
yes.
the unit in Wales, yeah.
Yep,
And
yep.
poor Azores comes off the board. I don't know what this icon is referencing. Looks like it's some kind of safari person. Well, a hunter safari, I suppose. That's not what you would want in an actual safari. But yeah, they unfortunately, you will only see this unit icon for one turn here, and it is going to disappear. So rip Azores, rip Sardinia down here. Do you want to talk about what's going on with your region?
So, London also goes into Bergen, which is great. That's exactly what we're hoping for. And Trondheim supported that attack, and I didn't support Hold Oslo. So Oslo still has Oslo. Oslo is going to be on 2, but things are looking good for me because I get Gothenburg. As we keep looking around, it's difficult to look at the map because of all of these annoying invalid orders that are covering everything. In this
Dublin
case, it's, I believe,
supporting
Dublin
Corsica
supporting,
to
yeah,
Helsingfors.
Helsingfors is the Holy Land. Corsica is, I believe, a Bumble and is asked for it. That's great. Um, we see that Trondheim ended up in Finnmark, but Trondheim is disbanding. Thankfully, Trondheim is still alive because they're in Arkhangelsk. So this wasn't great tactically. I'm obviously not. We, yeah. Look,
Really, you
I
would
got
have
my
wanted to
center.
support Hold Oslo, but your greed has not allowed this.
Well, me support holding. Why do I want to have support held Oslo?
Because then
Right?
Trondheim would have 2 instead of 1, and Oslo
But do
would be
I
down to
want
1 instead of
Trondheim
2.
to have 2 instead of 1?
They're in your alliance, of course you do,
Yeah,
right?
but they're not me.
Yeah, fair
Like,
enough. Basically,
it's.
Ezio is not a good ally. Is the
I
is the
am a good ally.
reasoning
Look
for
at how well
this?
I've been working with Finland,
Yes, you haven't
right?
walked into
It's
Umeå or Helsingfors yet because the opportunity has not arisen.
yeah, but also like they're still doing fine, and like I guarantee Gothenburg and stuff, and like relying on me to place my allies' growth before my own consistently is not a good plan. I agree. But in the short run, it does happen still, and that's why you need to be able to ensure that you can also grow. And like I will work with people. It does happen. It just look, man, I've been working with Trondheim for years, and I supported him into Oslo, right? You all saw me do that. I just like didn't support him to hold because I gotta make sure I take Gothenburg. Like, I don't know, it wasn't crazy. Um, but that's this stuff. So we also see that Luxembourg came through and did support Kiel into Bremen,
Yep,
and Copenhagen did move into Rostock. But
Rostock
our
didn't
buddy
go
and
to
King of
Kiel.
Prussia went for an aggressive moveset here, and attempted to support themselves into Krakow. But this means that Gdansk is not tapping Krakow, and this exact order set really, really punishes that because Krakow is uncut, so it does support Rostock into Brandenburg. And so now King of Prussia goes down to only one center, and that center is in Gdansk with 4 hostile armies around. Or
So,
no, only 3, because Warsaw is held by us.
as the Diplostrat siren goes past there, I will just explain this concept for anyone who's a bit newer to diplomacy seeing this, because this is one of the things that people trip over the most, right? Which is that if you are attacking a unit from the province it's supporting something against, you do not cut that support unless you dislodge it. So, in this case, Brandenburg attacking Krakow, because Krakow's support is against Brandenburg, this doesn't cut the support. So what Ezio is suggesting that King of Prussia should have done, I think, is just
Oh, should have
self-bounced
is
in.
saying, yeah, should have is saying it's really strong because we don't know. I don't think the Commonwealth said everything
Yes.
in their press here.
So
But
sorry.
the
So what I should say
safest
is the
option was
safe.
self-bounce in Krakow.
Yeah,
Yeah.
safe option. Self-bouncing Krakow means that no matter what Krakow decides to support, if it supports Prussia into Gdansk or Rostock into Brandenburg, you've got one unit that is still successfully tapping it. The one that it's not supporting something against. You can still kind of be countered there if they decide to switch things up and support something into Gdansk or Brandenburg, but actually in this situation you can't because nothing can issue that support, right? Everything is being cut. Rostock is being cut. Prussia is being cut. So Krakow is the only enemy unit that can support anything.
Yep.
So yeah,
Now, it's not the end of the world for the Viking Alliance because Copenhagen is tapping Rostock. Even though King of Prussia loses Brandenburg, we still take Rostock. So we're not going down one as an alliance. It's just Rostock is a center I feel very confident we would take next year. anyways. And so I would rather keep Brandenburg than Rostock. It's like a slightly less valuable position, and it changes who has it. King of Prussia was really anti-Commonwealth because they stabbed him and was going to continue to attack him, whereas Utrecht is not nearly um,
Yeah,
as anti-Commonwealth. So
Utrecht is only anti-Luxembourg. That is like who they are very angry against. Everyone in this region, they're basically working with the people who can keep them alive, right? They
yeah,
migrated and joined the Vikings to survive, so they're not angry at these people at all. They're just attacking Rostock because that's what you told them to do. Right.
and it's gonna get him a thought. Okay, so other tactics. You'll notice that Finland was supported into Warsaw. And did not take Wilno, which I was surprised about. But hey, it means I'm on 4 centers. That's great. I love being on 4 centers. Um, so that's good.
I
And
thought you said you
Finland's
didn't
on
want to
3.
be on 4 centers.
Exactly. It's a thing where like I wasn't trying to get on 4 centers, but like he gave me the center. Mm. How bad could it be? I don't know. It's fine. Um, And because Finland is in Warsaw, right, I still look at our tactical position, and it looks to me like Prussia, the center, is probably getting cooked. Um, but we'll talk about some stuff later. But me going on 4 is great. Other things to note, that's really nice. Novgorod does, in fact, move south into Kursk. And look, man, wouldn't it have been so much nicer to have been there in the fall? But whatever, or when they're in the spring, because they could do stuff in the fall. But oh well. This Bouncenbach Chisare was arranged because everything in the HBE relies on nobody doing anything that could let anything happen, and they were worried about somebody doing something, and so great, we'll just Bouncenbach Chisare.
Right. Who are they getting the center? Oh, they're getting the center off of Wilno, who is who had Kiev, right? So
Yes.
Wallachia has moved up to Kiev, now Constantinople, now owns Moldova, and then Jeddah gets transferred to whoever the hell this is. I don't know who that is.
I think that's the original Kiev.
Oh right, yeah, it is right. So they, in a way, they get transferred the dot from Kiev here. That's interesting. I did also love these unit icons, the Dreaming of Levant from the World Convoy. He's not going to let the World Convoy go. And these are quite cool ones as well, the Golden Horde. Each of their units has, like, this is their king over here with the scepter, and then they have swords on their other units, which is very cool. Lots of nice unit icons coming in this time.
Can't form Sweden.
But you can't form Sweden, that's true.
After I took Gothenburg, I was like, hey, I'm just confirming I can't form Sweden. And then the GM was like, yep, that is correct. You cannot form Sweden.
Ezio assault will continue as this continues. You will notice Italian alliance has basically fallen into complete chaos here. They end up with Sardinia holds in Sardinia just to make sure. Sorry, Sicily holds in Sardinia just to make sure they take it, and that means that the Coal Alliance, the Spanish alliance, just slip past them into the Tyrrhenian Sea. Cairo does stab for Sicily, and the HBE moves in, and at the same time, Naples stabs for Rome. This was a stab, I think, and so Rome doesn't get their build from taking Genoa. I feel like this didn't have to be a stab, right? You could very easily have negotiated, hey, you're gaining one up there, I'm still on one. We have these enemies coming on this flank, I need to gain one. But I think the Italian alliance had basically completely collapsed outside of these two working together up here. So, yeah, and if you look at what's happening in the wheel right now, the Italians really need the help of this Nuremberg-Wilno alliance in order to succeed here. They could make gains on guesses here if they weren't relying on this. But they are with this moveset, they are very heavily reliant on Prague going to Vienna, because they're basically doing everything they can to make sure that succeeds, right? They're cutting Bavaria, they're supporting this down, and it doesn't. They just hold each other up here, so this fails, they get knocked out of Innsbruck as well, and Vienna is going to build another unit there. And Strasbourg comes down to Switzerland at the same time as Rome moves away. So suddenly, even the northern Italians are looking like they're in a really, really bad spot.
Yeah, Northern Italy went all in on support from someone else, and that support from Wilno. Wilno has no reason to go into Vienna because they're already in Prague. So they're already going on one. They can't gain by taking Vienna, so they're not netting any builds here. So that's a really tough pitch. Nuremberg might want it to happen, but it's
Yeah.
really scary.
I think their
Yeah,
hope here was that Wilno wants their alliance with Nuremberg to, like, as a whole, gain one. So they have Prague, they gain Nuremberg, in fact, gain two, and they gain Vienna. But of course, for Wilno specifically, that involves making this kind of risky move, and these two units could still attack Prague together and basically kill Wilno if they guess wrong, right? Or if Trieste doesn't come through with this support.
yeah, if they don't quite do everything they said they were doing, which seems kind of risky. Yeah, no, it's a pitch that I think a lot of people lost track of pitching for individual people and were making pitches for alliances still, because very early in the game, it was about making alliance negotiations on behalf of alliances, and sometimes that still worked, like with the Vikings and HBE. There were still pieces of this, but as alliances broke down, people still did some of these alliance meta stuff instead of trying to pitch specifically to one person why this is good for that one person, and like kept in mind that it did need to be good for each person, and thinking of Nuremberg Wilno as a block isn't, like, they're not necessarily a block. And I saw instances like this with negotiations with Spain and Italy. Like, yeah, they're still allies, but like you have to explain to each person why it makes sense to that person to do stuff. Whatever. The Vikings obviously didn't have this problem, because if you convinced me why we should do something, I would tell that person to do it. Right?
Yeah, you just needed to get the tactics officer on board. Although
And if
you technically weren't supposed to be the person negotiating, right? So you would.
Yeah, but all of this fell out after, like, the diplomat, Ireland stabbed us in, like, '01.
Yeah, fair enough.
And so then it became Finland and me negotiating on behalf of all of the Vikings everywhere, telling them all what to do every phase.
Speaking of Ireland, I am actually quite surprised. I remember being quite surprised that they
They
didn't
didn't
just
take
take
Edinburgh. Yeah,
Edinburgh.
because they were arguing for the GBA. Great British Alliance. Gotta make that happen.
It will absolutely happen, right? At this point,
Yeah,
I
with
think it is
West
actually
having.
extremely relevant because they are all kind of saying, hey, we can get rid of Azores and then we can all be this big happy family and work together.
Except Wessex joined. Except Edinburgh is not part. If Edinburgh joined the Vikings by stabbing Ireland, and Wessex joined the Vikings, London joined the Vikings by working with us to take Bergen. So the GPA, quote unquote, is Ireland plus Oxford, who is now in Plymouth and Edinburgh.
But they were definitely
And
pitching that the GBA would include Wessex. I remember this, right?
yeah, but like Wessex is a Viking.
Yeah, it was like a lot of words at this point, and everyone was going, "Oh, it's Britain." You know, we're all used to Britain at this point. They don't keep their word. They all stab each other. So
They do.
yeah, should be noted that in terms of like, if we consider this whole area to be the British area, I know it includes one that isn't, right? So after that first stab, the Brits hadn't taken anything outside of Britain until they got Bergen on this turn, which was Wessex actively working with other people.
Yeah. Turns out to take dots in other zones, you usually need to coordinate with somebody elsewhere. Sorry,
Yes.
I'm so tilted at Brits and how they play this entire game.
All right.
But yes, this works. So we can, I think, look at the clean map
Yes, I'm down to do that. Let's
and start talking about
so
retreats.
retreats.
And builds.
The
Yeah, but it's
retreats
very
don't matter,
self-forward.
right?
Ooh,
Apart from
Trondheim
mine.
has a retreat.
Oh yes, go ahead. Talk about that.
I want Trondheim to be in Jamtland because it's a good center to be in. That's it.
Yep. All right. I think I agree. I mean, it's next to Trondheim and Oslo.
If Oslo gets kicked out, I really don't want Oslo to retreat to Jamtland. So
that
I
makes
want
sense.
Trondheim to be there.
Right. And down here, of course, the Azores thing doesn't matter. The Bremen retreat doesn't matter. I guess the Brandenburg retreat does matter as long as he keeps it on the board, but he'll probably keep Gdansk, right? Because that's his center. You don't want to keep
Yes.
the random unit that isn't in a center.
Honestly, maybe. If you want to be a rogue and run around trying to take advantage of chaos. But I think keeping Gdansk makes the most sense.
Yeah, especially since you can probably rely on the Vikings to evacuate you into Prussia, especially considering, like, storyline-wise, that's your center anyway, right?
Yeah, you can rely on the Vikings to have your back. Yes,
Mhm.
absolutely. That's good. Yes, I'm glad you agree with that analysis, Captain Meme. See, the Vikings are
Of
reliable.
course, yes. And of course, I have these two possible retreat options. They are both terrible. I'm just going to take this off and rebuild Nantes. Well, not. But the current argument here is, do I build Army Nantes or do I build Fleet Nantes, right? I have agreed with Marrakesh to build Army Nantes and attack these guys. But I was doing that under the thinking I would have Bordeaux, they would be a bit weaker, and also I would have friends here. Which you'll note, I do have Rabat in Bay of Biscay now, if I am working with the Moroccans, but Rabat just got stabbed by Marrakesh, and now only have one unit left. So if they keep Bay of Biscay, I have, sure, one friend who is running away, but also these guys aren't really aligned with that friend anymore, right? I'm pretty sure immediately after this happened, Tangier was pretty happy with Marrakesh still because, like, Rabat has been kind of unreliable during the game. So they were immediately saying, hey, okay, I'll join you in this. I'll go and take Azores. And Rabat responds to that by going, hey, Ghent, you're my friend, right? You'll support me into Bordeaux, right? We'll talk about where that goes, but at the moment I'm looking at this and thinking I cannot afford to build an army right now because Bordeaux is ready to kill me, right? If I do this, like, I have no friends in this area who can help me. They will just kill me together. And at this point as well, Bordeaux decides to substitute out the previous player for Bordeaux, the person who made the Frenchiest fries as their logo. And another Bordeaux comes in, and like the previous Bordeaux, I think had a very like so their playstyle was very much revolving around being very loyal to the alliance they were part of, which was the Italians, right? And all of their negotiation style was about being part of the Italians and being part of the French and being part of this great group. And the new person, I did not get that impression with. They did come in and immediately recommit to the French alliance. In fact, they came up with a really nice name for the French alliance, which was the Three Mouseketeers. I don't remember why we became mice, but at this point we were the Three Mouseketeers, although that included Luxembourg, which I think it actually lines up with the, like, there are four people in the Three Musketeers, so, but they didn't feel to me like they were necessarily someone who would be all in with that alliance. They kind of came across to me as someone who was quite tactically astute and looking through their options. So remember, in this year we've had replacement Paris, and then we had replacement Bordeaux, and so now my entire alliance has switched out. So I just decided this. Okay, I'm gonna build a fleet Nantes. There is no way I'm gonna get away with Army Nantes here. So that is what I'm gonna end up building. And you'll see I'll take the fleet off the board here, and then we'll go to the clean map. Don't know if do you want to talk about builds at all?
Builds. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
All right.
because you have
So
one.
I have a build, and it's an annoying, it's a hectic build. I want to build Army Wilno and just knock it off, and we're calling it a day. But we're doing negotiations with the HBE, and I'm on 4, right? And everyone is being so annoying because 4, notably, it's winning the game. All right, 4 is tied for first place with Luxembourg, who's also a Viking. But like, we'll talk about that later. But I'm like, all right, I want to just build an army in Wilno because it's the most useful unit I can build, right? Because I can't build in Narva because I mean I could technically, but it doesn't do anything. And then Stockholm and Gothenburg are both occupied, so it's just in Wilno. And like, I don't really need a second fleet in like another fleet. And then army in Wilno, borders Kiev, borders Warsaw. It's just a great unit to have. Like, I want to just build army Wilno and call it a day. But the HBE looks at this and is like, no, we don't want you to do that because then you guys could take Kiev. And I believe Wallachia was elected leader of the HBE on this phase.
Okay.
Wallachia is the person who's currently in Kiev, I want to point out.
Yes.
And so Walachia's like, all right, look, in exchange for you not building an army in Wilno, how about we give Arkhangelsk a different center somewhere in the east? How about Astrakhan? More or less.
I thought Moscow was part of the HB as well.
I believe that is the case.
Oh,
Yes.
so they're moving Moscow like...
They're gonna take Circassia, and rather than letting the HBE get a build off of the Golden Horde, in exchange for us not killing Wallachia, he has negotiated on behalf of the Alliance, after he was elected leader, to let us get the build from Golden Horde instead. And by us, it is Arkhangelsk.
Yes.
And it's like, okay, this also has the benefit of keeping Arkhangelsk away from me because he's getting builds in the south, but could probably done other stuff anyways. And I'm not really convinced that, like, I looked at the actual war here, and it's like, we get Kiev very easily by fighting the HBE, but we struggle to make too much progress elsewhere. And, like, I wrote out this big tactical thing where I'm like, it's probably not worth it.
Fair enough.
Oh, there was, like, a deal where, like, Smolensk was supposed to have moved north or something, or, like, Smolensk was supposed to still be in Smolensk, and Finland decided to hold in Smolensk, I think.
They
Was
supported Novgorod down to Kursk. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was there to be a little bit annoying, and that's fine.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, so as part of these negotiations, I agree to build a fleet in Wilno, and like a fleet's fine. It like all of my centers are coastal centers. It helps keep my Baltic Sea on lockdown. It's just like not as good as an army would have been, but hey, sometimes you have to make concessions. And, like,
Yep.
I don't know, man.
Yeah.
It was a concession. It did a thing. It got arcane. It had its upsides. That was good. Trondheim has a disband, and they have to disband their fleet in Finnmark or their army in Jämtland.
It's got to be the fleet, right?
Well, it was the fleet. I'm not convinced that was correct. I think I should have tried to pitch him to disband the army instead.
But I thought you said you really didn't want Oslo retreating through here.
That is what I said. Yeah, that's why I wanted to retreat into Jämtland. But now I realize, like, fleets are useful and armies are annoying to me. Because, like, Army Jämtland might do stuff to me at some point. And, like, man, if he disbanded that army here, I would have never had to worry about Trondheim for the rest of the game.
Fair,
but, like,
I guess.
With that army, it's useful to me still. Like, it can support me back into Stockholm, or back into Oslo. But, yeah, I don't know. So, it's a thing where Jämtland is the far more tactically useful army. If I had all of these units, obviously I'm keeping Jämtland. It's just because Jämtland is held by somebody else. Maybe I don't want somebody else in the most powerful center. But either way, it's fine. So we decided to have him keep Jämtland. Finland is building, and Finland decides to build an army in Umeå. Because they don't need to trust me anymore. They trust me as much as they have to. So.
Is this real Finland back at this point, by the way?
It's real Finland comes back. Yeah.
Okay.
Real Finland came back, is like, how the hell did I get in Warsaw? Alright.
Yep, because the substitute managed to negotiate them in that. That's
Yeah, and it might have been the case that the previous substitute negotiated for Finland the deal for Finland to take Warsaw on the last turn when he got into Wilno, and then it was like Finland comes in and then just actually takes it himself but executes it. But it's like, how'd that happen? I forget the exact. I wasn't 100%. Like, I didn't talk much with the Finland sub, and they were super pro me. Like, they were the great allies. I am super happy to have worked with cooler Finland.
Right, so.
Other important things that happened on this build, with you discussions about the whole Musketeers and the French alliance thing. Luxembourg decided that it was more important for them to be part of the Musketeers than it was to be part of the Vikings. And either as an ultimatum or something, they felt that they could not be part of the Vikings anymore, so they left.
Yep. I remember this from my side, right? there were a lot of negotiations that happened around making sure Luxembourg wouldn't put down Army Luxembourg. We were really, really trying to get them to put down Fleet Utrecht, and that was helped a lot by the New Bordeaux. Like it was kind of, it was almost a little problematic to the degree that the New Bordeaux came in with it, because they clearly didn't trust Luxembourg. They came in with, sorry for the motorbike noises, there's people. Yeah, anyway. So they came in with the notes of the previous Bordeaux, and the previous Bordeaux had obviously been my friend, right? Significantly, but they'd also had this Frenchius fries problem with Luxembourg, and I haven't read the notes, but I'm fairly convinced in their notes they said, do not trust Luxembourg under any circumstances, primarily because of this Frenchius fries debacle. So the New Bordeaux came in saying, oh, I can't trust Luxembourg, and like accused Luxembourg of being untrustworthy, to the point that like I was almost defending Luxembourg in that negotiation. I was saying, hey, I trust Luxembourg to stick with people who it's in their interest to stick with, right? And I think it can be in their interest to stick with us as long as they build a fleet here. And that negotiation happens for a little while, and eventually Bordeaux gets talked around into trusting them as long as they build Fleet Utrecht. And Luxembourg kind of comes around to that idea too of they will be, like the French will be fine with me as long as I build the fleet here. That is like a requirement for me being fine with the French. So at that point,
Yeah, and I think that's why he leaves the Vikings, because we don't want it to build that fleet, because that fleet doesn't do anything, because we've got Wessex in the Vikings, we've got Gothenburg in the Vikings, who's +1, so like the useful build obviously is the army in Luxembourg that does things, but instead he builds Fleet Utrecht, and it's like, alright, sure, yeah, because you're leaving the Vikings now, okay?
Yeah.
I mean, again, I got what I wanted out of it, which was the support of the Bremen, so I'm fine with him leaving. It's just like, he clearly left the Vikings here. This is relevant. Sorry, later he's going to claim that he like never left the Vikings or whatever, and so like I think it's important to just point out that he very clearly used the Vikings here, right now,
Yes.
in a very visible manner.
That does definitely become important later, and I also need to note that I do not trust Luxembourg at all still at this point. I do say that I trust him to work with people it's in his interest to work with, and I think that's true. Like, generally speaking, he's been pretty loyal to the people he's had a good interest in working with, right? With the Wheel, he's stuck with them. With Strasbourg in particular, he's stuck with him through thick and thin, because Strasbourg is doing everything that Luxembourg wants them to do. He did stab Kiel the moment that the centre became open, but at that point it wasn't really in his interest to work with Kiel anymore, right? So I think it's in his interest generally, like, he sticks with people it's in his interest to work with, but I'm also not entirely convinced that it will always be in his interest to work with us. So I am trying to, like, push him to make builds that force him to work with us, basically, or force him to not have any good stab against us, primarily because I don't trust him. If he managed to put down Army Luxembourg here, I think he absolutely just pivots this way. Maybe he goes towards the Wheel, but I
think he, like, takes Strasbourg, right?
Yeah, but, like, Strasbourg was essentially his unit anyway, right? That player is doing everything he wants them to do.
No, he's doing everything Freiburg
I guess it's too... Yeah, maybe it's too far south to actually help him.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess he could have just walked into Strasbourg, but I think he would have attacked the French at some point.
At some point, yeah, absolutely. No, I think it makes perfect sense, right? Why you wanted him to build a fleet in Utrecht, absolutely.
Yes.
That's great. But it's just like, anyways, here he leaves the Vikings, builds Fleet Utrecht, and leaves the Vikings, absolutely.
Yeah. Should
great.
we move
Glad
to the
we're
actual builds?
all on the same page about that. Yeah, we can see. So for builds, again, just so we're clarifying, the Vikings are we are building in Oxford because we gained Wessex. We're building in Wilno. We're building in Umeå. Trondheim is disbanding, but we're building in Copenhagen and building in Kiel. So I believe the Vikings are +4 as an alliance as far as building, even with Luxembourg losing. Just so we're clear here about the state of the Vikings in general, in case people are like giving me shit for being the bad head of an alliance and being all self-interested and stuff. Like,
You are
The Vikings are
self-interested, but your
cooking.
friends are also gaining as a result of your
Yeah,
self-interest.
the Vikings are cooking. We are
Well,
crushing
all
the
your
map.
friends
Oh, we
except
forgot about
Trondheim.
Prussia going down one. Yeah, except Trond. Like, not all my friends are going, but the alliance as a whole is growing, and most of them are doing well, and like they're gonna be okay. We'll figure out how to get Trondheim. We in fact have negotiated for Trondheim to get back into Trondheim and be fine. And I'm
Yes.
gonna tap Oslo to make sure that he gets in there.
But notably,
And
you could have
yeah,
absolutely support held him in Oslo, and you knew that, and yet you decided
I
not to.
suspected I could do it, but I also like how many times have you thought you had a center and you thought an opponent wasn't going to do something crazy and then they do something bad and then you realize you should have just done the guaranteed move.
Yeah, fair enough, I guess.
That happens all the time in games of diplomacy where I'm like confident that they're not going to do the thing to try to take the center because they see that it's going to get stopped and then they just do it anyways. And I'm like, why? And then yeah. So that's
um,
fine.
very important thing that happens here as well. Bremen is dead. Bremen was the Bumble Pope. That is the third Bumble Pope killed by the
Yes.
Vikings. As
Notably, the leader in the previous vote was Edinburgh,
yes,
now in Dublin, who's currently a Viking. I would love for them to be the Bumble Pope. It would be the greatest thing.
yeah. So the next
Besides just
Bumble,
kill them.
the next Bumble Popehood happens basically. I can't remember if it's Bremen who nominates potential replacements. I think Bremen does nominate his potential replacements and chooses Portugal and Marrakesh. And then someone else, I think it might be Oxford or Edinburgh, is actually in charge of making the vote happen and adds Edinburgh to the list of people you can vote for anyway.
I think it was Oxford, yes.
Yeah, and so the vote ends up being between Edinburgh, Portugal, and Marrakesh, and the winner is Marrakesh. By I think a
Primarily
fairly
because
fairly
they are so
slim
far away
margin
from me.
over these. But yeah, this makes Ezio very sad because there is no way you're getting down here to kill Marrakesh.
I have no influence in Elm Hall. I can't actually kill Elm Hall, so the Bumbles have finally nominated a safe pope.
Yes, except it's not a pope anymore. This is a Bumble Caliph now. The
Oh,
Marrakesh has
sure.
accepted their title. And at this point, seeing that Marrakesh is the new Bumble Caliph, and I am still an ex-Bumble, remember, I left the Bumbles when the original Bumble advised Salt to kill me. I went ahead to Marrakesh and said, hey, we're friends. I will rejoin the Bumbles if, officially in your role as Caliph, you declare the very first Bumble Pope a heretic for what he said about me. I mean, it's not relevant to the game at all. Like, it has no point whatsoever. And he abjectly refuses to do this because Helsingfors was the holy Bumble, and therefore they cannot have been a heretic, right? But he does eventually agree to disavow the words of Helsingfors in that moment and says that as a human, Helsingfors is capable of making mistakes, and therefore what they said about me specifically should not be officially part of Bumble canon. And therefore I rejoin the Bumbles at this point, and I actually get nominated as a Bumble Cardinal, which is something that happens. I don't know when the Bumble Cardinals started being Cardinals, but at this point, Edinburgh is a cardinal and Oxford is a cardinal, and they're like the secondary leaders of Bumbleism to the Pope slash Caliph, and I get nominated as the third
Cardinals
cardinal.
and a caliph. Interesting. Okay.
Yep. So we have Bumbleism is very strong in this region specifically, and in this region down here, we've got the Caliph in Marrakesh, and we have all three cardinals being like right next to each other up here.
Yes.
Yeah. So that is what is happening with Bumbleism right now. Somehow the Caliph has taken over. Yeah. And here, the fish emerge as well. I think it might be next turn, but the exact turn doesn't really matter, right? In that there is a discussion over, hey, doesn't Bumbleism have too much influence for religion over this map? In that there is no competing religion whatsoever. And I think that the person who is playing Freiburg has fish in their name. They're like called uncooked fish or something like that. And Bordeaux, the new player there, offers to join a new religion with them, which will be the Church of Holy Fish or something along those lines. And they go and pick out like a holy fish image for their Lord and Savior, the fish. And they do all of this stuff to set it up as an official religion. Official, haha. And they even, that I think Strasbourg joins, they have quite a heavy presence over here. I don't remember exactly who's part of it. I know Luxembourg, because Luxembourg joins everything, right? Luxembourg joined the fish as well. And I think Madrid declared themselves both Bumble and Fish because they had the shark here. So at this point, an opposing religion has developed in this region. And
Yeah,
Bordeaux...
not gonna lie, I didn't know about the fish religion. I thought that every time anyone said fish, they meant Freiburg. Because he had the fish in his name, and I just thought that's what they were talking about, and they're all in like that same region.
Fantastic.
So that makes sense. I had absolutely no idea about this. Great.
See, it's relevant to me, because I am a cardinal of Bumbleism, and suddenly my adjacent neighbour has joined an opposing religion to mine. And they actually ask me to, hey, can you defect from Bumbleism and become a cardinal of the fish religion instead? And I just went...
Well, if they'd offered you the Pope of the fish religion, maybe you'd say yes.
Yeah. I mean, the Pope is another matter. I can be bought. I just need the price to be high enough, right?
Yeah. If you're trying to get poached by a competing company, you need to be offered a higher salary or title than where you're currently given.
Mm-hmm.
Any recruiters who's looking for me know that I too am willing to be bought.
All right. So then, I get offered this thing of, hey, come and join the fish, and I say no, I am staying as a Bumble, but we can be an ecumenical alliance in France here, because the player of Paris was not joining any religion. So we have an atheist, we have a fish player, and we have a Bumble, all living in harmony over here. And of course we have someone who's part of every religion at once. So, yeah. And so this is how things go on the religion front. It's honestly completely irrelevant to the game. The religions never come into this again in terms of who attacks who. That just doesn't... It doesn't matter.
Yeah, now the Bumble Popes are all too far for me to kill.
Yes, but it is... That does indeed happen. Alright, so... What we need to move on to builds if you are done with looking at the builds. And yeah, my icon is still here in the sea because they forgot to remove it. It's gonna swim back to Nantes on this turn.
Nice. I've already talked about builds, about the Viking builds. The fleet and we'll know what the negotiations involving getting Arkhangelsk into Astrakhan.
Mm.
Finland has got a build, and Army Finland. Or Army in Umeå instead of Helsingfors, like, whatever. I want it to be in Helsingfors to push it south, but he's like, no, I want it in Umeå to be safe and stuff, and yeah, whatever. Yep, I think we can go see builds.
Alright, let's go ahead to the builds, and you will see, they didn't put a circle around it. What? They just...
Yeah, this was basically a retreat, whatever.
This is supposed to have a circle, and Oxford now has hats. I can't remember if they had hats in the previous one or not. No, they didn't. So Oxford has their own icon now as well.
I love how the windmills on both Utrecht and Luxembourg.
This causes another diplomatic incident between Utrecht and Luxembourg, because Luxembourg, of course, here they rename themselves to the 17 provinces. They are... basically saying, hey, I'm taking over the Netherlands area, right? And I'm gonna stick a windmill on because that is the icon of that. And Utrecht also chooses a windmill because they were, of course, originally in the Netherlands. They're like, how dare you choose a windmill when I'm the Dutch player here? You were in Luxembourg. Like, you're appropriating our imagery here.
Yeah, Utrecht is pissed.
Yeah, Utrecht is very unhappy about the double windmill situations. But yeah, so they do have subtly different windmills, thankfully. I don't know why this one has, like, the wheel behind it. I don't think they were part of the wheel or anything. I guess that was just the image that they found. But they do look subtly different. Well, not subtly, but, like, different. Yeah, I don't think any of the other builds are relevant. You will note that the Caliph now has a banner with a rabbit on it. This is because they were negotiating with Rabat, right? And so Rabat, after the stab, basically says, hey, it's fine, Marrakesh. I thought you would stab me anyway. It doesn't really matter. I'm going to throw this game to you regardless. And they were quite surprised by this, Marrakesh. But they went, yeah, sure, that works fine. And so, yeah, they are going to stick the rabbit on their banner here, I guess. And we have this, and Naples renames to the Papal State now that they have Roman Naples. So I guess we technically have a third competing religion in Christianity, but it hasn't spread very far in this reality. It's just here. Alright. Oh, and the Nuremberg wagon. At this point, Nuremberg declares themselves to be a nomad, because they've been traveling between various centers so much. Although it's really only been here and here, right? But yeah, so, is there anything you want to talk about these builds, or shall we just move ahead?
Nothing about the builds. But before we talk about moves for the next phase, right?
Let's
Like,
go
we
to
can start
clean
talking about the moves. Oh, clean map, yes.
Yeah,
Yeah,
there
yeah,
we
yeah.
go.
Okay, so you've been dealing with some subs in your region of the map. Absolutely. The Vikings on this phase, with less than an hour to go in the phase shift, after we've got plans established, had both Spitsbergen and Oslo sub out.
It should be
So,
noted that Oslo was already at war with you, right? They were already a sub, so
yep.
this was a substitution of a substitution.
Yes, Oslo subbed in, stabbed us,
And then
didn't
left.
elaborate, left. Yes. And then Spitsbergen subbed out. So we had planned this out. So also in build, Oxford built an army. London built an army in Oxford.
Oh,
And
yes.
and the actual Oxford player built a fleet in Eddie. That's a big one because this build was viewed by everyone as Wessex stabbing the GBA, which makes sense because they're going to take Plymouth. And so Oxford is so London is going +1 here. So we're like, okay, great. We can now let Bergen, that center, be taken by Spitsbergen. So that's useful. Great. They can have Bergen. They're going to go to 2. But they'll first of all, they're going to support Jamtland into Trondheim. I'm going to tap Oslo. I'll move into Skagerrak, so I will be able to support Spitsbergen into Bergen in the fall. Like, everything's nice and set up, so a bunch of these smaller Vikings are going to be on 2, and will be great. All right. So the tactics, we would have Spitsbergen support Jamtland to Trondheim, Stockholm stabs Oslo, Gothenburg to Skagerrak, and then in the fall, Skagerrak supports Norwegian Sea into Bergen, Trondheim supports Stockholm into Oslo, and boom, he's cooked.
Yep.
Pretty much, it's not quite that straightforward, and we'll see how things would have actually happened. I probably would have supported myself into Oslo instead, and all sorts of stuff. But we don't have to worry about any of that stuff because they both sub out, Oslo and Spitsbergen. And Oslo looks at this position and says, oh my god, I'm about to die. Everyone is trying to attack me. They're all going to kill me. I'm on 2 centers and they're split. Oh god. So they say, please, please, please don't kill me. I will do anything. Please, 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 for the love of God. I haven't insulted you guys. I haven't stabbed you. I am just here. We can work together. And I'm like,
You're like, I want dot. I see dot.
I see that dot, man. I don't know really. But then Spitsbergen's like, all right, and like I'm like, okay, fine, we can probably work this out. I'll take Oslo anyways. You can take Bergen, I guess, but like Spitsbergen's the one who's supposed to be taking Bergen anyways. So Spitsbergen's the one who you're like, because we're also taking Trondheim. That's happening also. So it's really Spitsbergen who has to like be okay with you joining. And Spitsbergen, who also subbed in on the same turn, I think felt bad for his fellow sub because, like, he subbed into the good spot and the other guy subbed into the bad spot. And he's like, all right, fine, I guess we'll not kill Oslo. Fine. Sure. So
Poor
he
old
decided,
Wessex. In this, like, they just worked with you and you're immediately
yeah.
kicking them out again.
Well, they're already on 3, right? And they're going to be gaining Plymouth, so they're going to be on 3 anyways. And we're still trying to get everyone on 3 in the Vikings.
Righto.
So that's the argument. But here's where, as Oxford, I am confident they are hugely regretting their decision to support Oxford into Plymouth because they're trying to take Plymouth right now. If they had simply not supported Oxford into Plymouth, it would have been Azores in Plymouth instead.
Yep.
And they could take Plymouth and not be stabbing the other GBA. Like, they could have made any excuse to not do this, but they did, and so now they're at war. So Edinburgh, who's in Dublin, is still ostensibly a Viking, but struggles to see how they're going to grow right now. And they've just been holding up in Dublin for a while. And so we'll see how things go from their end. But Wessex is feeling the heat. Also, with Luxembourg leaving the Vikings' last builds, this makes Wessex feel scared because, oh my God, there's now a fleet in Ghent and a fleet in Utrecht that both are potentially hostile to us. That's not great. To Wessex in particular. So Wessex is scared. Um, Tactically, other things that are going on for the Vikings. We are getting Utrecht. We want to get up to 3 builds with Brandenburg being hostile. I want Utrecht and Gothenburg to do I want Bremen to move to Wadden and Rostock move to the Sound, while Copenhagen moves to Rostock and Kiel moves to Bremen, right? To have
Yep.
both of them shuffle in. Um, there is miscommunication though with this Gothenburg. He has checked out royally after losing Gothenburg to the Oslo stab. So he checks in like once or twice a phase and people don't really know if he's around or not. He posts a thing asking for move orders, and like I've posted the orders for everyone to do at some point in this phase, and then Luxembourg answers Gothenburg saying you need to move Bremen into Wadden to make room for Kiel to move to Bremen or something. Well, doesn't explicitly say to move Kiel to Bremen. And Gothenburg reads that very literally. And we'll see what effect that has later. Also, we're looking at Prussia in Gdansk, and I forget what agreement Finland makes here. But for some reason, we don't just support Gdansk into Prussia.
I feel
Probably
like you
because I have this
should.
stupid fleet in Wilno, so I can't support Hold Warsaw. I think it's that.
Ah, right. I see. Surely you can get your friend in Wallachia to support Warsaw for you. Well, from Wallachia, in Kiev.
I think he wants to take Wilno off of me to get me back to 3. I actually forget what negotiations happened this phase and why nobody decides to support King of Prussia here.
There's a bit of a spoiler for the results, but yeah, King of Prussia is kind of left hanging.
I think it's that I just really want to get back into the Baltic Sea. Is really the answer? Oh, yes! Ha! Yes, Brandenburg is a fleet. For the first time in a very long time, there's a hostile fleet that borders the Baltic Sea. I really don't want that to happen because that would like risk Helsingfors is the scary part, right? And so Finland doesn't want that to happen. So I need to get into Baltic Sea. That's why.
Okay,
Right.
makes sense.
That makes sense. Yeah.
And
Okay.
you can shuffle
Great.
Wilno along to cover Courland as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. So poor
Okay,
old
so that
King of
happens on
Prussia
that front,
is...
and we have the agreement in the east about Arkhangelsk and Moscow. Yep. Okay.
Yeah, should I discuss what's happening on my side of things? Or...
Yeah.
Yeah.
Vikings, the northern part of the map is done,
Alright.
except for Luxembourg, who's left. Yeah, you're going to talk on Luxembourg. You're going to touch on Luxembourg, so.
Yeah, so first things first, you will note that Rabat kept their unit in Bay of Biscay instead of their unit in Canary Basin. This is primarily because they said, hey, Marrakesh, I'm happy to throw to you, basically, it's completely fine. They also kind of said the same thing to Tangier. Tangier was less happy with them, I think. I feel like the Tangier might have subbed out at this point as well. Actually, that might be next year. Tangier certainly subs out at some point, but we'll get to that. But they keep Bay of Biscay on. They basically say, hey... Oh, did I go back a phase? Yeah, sorry. They say, hey, you know, Azores is going to be taken by Tangier, so I need to become a refugee. Hey, again, you know that I saved you last turn by not supporting Kiel into Nantes. How about you repay the favour by supporting me into Bordeaux? And I do not want an angry Rabat, right? Because they are adjacent to me, but I also really do not want an angry, like Bordeaux. And you will note that Bordeaux has changed their flag now. This is the substitute. They decided to go with the French, I don't know what this is called, but like the French symbol. So I'm kind of trying to negotiate with both of them and say, hey, Rabat, I'm still your friend, but I cannot support you into Bordeaux. That is just not going to happen. You need to go somewhere else. And Rabat is really insistent about wanting this support into Bordeaux. And at some point, Bordeaux, I think they renamed themselves to Aquitaine here as well, but like, so Aquitaine.
Yeah. We can call them Aquitaine, because that's how I know them.
Yes. They go, hey, is Ghent on our side, or are they on Morocco's side? They asked that in Elm Chat, while basically the Morocco-Spain people are all having a conversation, and they get like 3 different answers from different people that are all completely different. They get, I think, a yes from like Madrid and a no from Tangier and like a maybe from Morocco or something along those lines. I just remember seeing them say, wait, none of these answers are the same. And I was just there laughing and not messaging anything because I really don't want to alienate Rabat while they're right next to me, right? But I also, like, absolutely don't want to alienate Bordeaux. So eventually I managed to convince Rabat, hey, you need to go to Iberian Current instead. We'll, like, try and convince Portugal to keep you alive in Azores by making you useful moving north against Britain or against the Vikings. I don't think they were ever going to be useful against the Vikings, right? It's just too long of a distance for the amount of game time left. But that was what we were saying. At the same time, Luxembourg is saying they want to move into, like, English Channel to... I think it was to help Wessex? I'm pretty sure it was to help Wessex because these guys were all negotiating about potentially killing Wessex at this point. Right, so Luxembourg is pushing very heavily, hey, I want to go to the English Channel. I was looking at it and like, okay, well, for one, if they do move Ghent into the English Channel, I think there is some possibility that they move Amsterdam into Ghent and Hesse into Luxembourg, get positioning on Paris, right, and start pushing through this direction. And I, as previously mentioned, don't particularly trust Luxembourg. So at this point, I say to them, hey, you know, I'm okay with you going into Channel, but you need to hold Amsterdam. I can't remember if we, like, negotiated that they had to hold Utrecht as well, I think.
Well, so what happened is that you heard my talk about what I want Gothenburg to do with Bremen into Wadden Sea and Kiel into Bremen. That means that Bremen needs to move out to the Wadden Sea, which means that Utrecht can't move into the Wadden Sea.
Yes. And so if I'm demanding that Amsterdam holds, it means that Utrecht also has to hold if they're doing this. And
it was that you specifically said that Amsterdam couldn't move to Ghent.
Yes. Oh, yeah, because I saw that you had made this thing of Bremen has to go out to Wadden, so I thought, oh, well, Amsterdam can't move if it's... right. I just wanted it to stay stuck there. That was the main thing. But yeah. So...
Yeah, what a great ally. Mandates that their allies' units stay stationary. Look at me as an ally. I'm a much better ally. I tell all my allies to move their units away from me.
I am an ally with Luxembourg because I am required to be, right? In this situation. I'm saying, hey, yeah, it's fine, we'll stick in this alliance together, and I'm very happy for them to be part of the French alliance because it means they aren't moving towards France. But even then, I'm still suspicious that they will try and move towards France, so I am not really very happy with the idea of them moving Amsterdam out. And then they agree to do this, right? And I look at the situation, I'm like, they can't really be agreeing to do this. They're not going to hold Amsterdam. There's no way they just keep two of their units completely stationary for the entire year. And so they just want Ghent to go out to English Channel, supposedly. I know that Bay of Biscay is moving to Iberian Current because of what we've agreed to do, right? And I'm getting pressured by people in Morocco and such to block Luxembourg out of the channel anyway. I just go, I don't say anything about it, but I go, I think it makes sense for me to pin the Ghent unit in and bounce it back, so that if he orders Amsterdam to Ghent, which I think he will, that also bounces back, and then we have the excuse we need to pounce on him, right? Because if he has agreed to hold Amsterdam, and he actually mobilizes it this way, even if I bounce that back so it holds, instead of so that it doesn't get in, right? We will have seen that he was meaning to stab, and therefore we have the motivation. We can say to Paris, hey, you need to go full force that way, and we have an enemy in this direction to all attack. And at this point, that's kind of important, because the new Paris was very unsure about this position that they're in, basically going, what the hell am I doing in Navarre/Occitania? Is there any way I can move this back? And they actually agree to force disband this unit and rebuild this up here, which Luxembourg is not very happy about, and which also contributed to the fact that I thought he was going to make the move towards us. Do you want to talk any more about your negotiations with Lux here, or does that cover most things?
I was just like, hey, Luxembourg, don't bounce Wadden Sea because you don't want us to attack you. And we're just moving into Bremen. Like, you were a Viking. We can maybe still be friends again, and you can maybe be good or something. We'll see. But, like, we're trying to get our armies down there, and if we can work together, we can, like, kill stuff. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's all my negotiation with Luxembourg. And then he seemed to go along with it.
Okay. So that's kind of everything then? I know there was a lot of negotiation that happened in the wheel, but most of this is now just beating up on Rome and Trieste, because the wheel has made a solid advance down this way. Remember, Nuremberg is kind of no longer part of the wheel, and they're being very coy about what they're going to do in this turn. But they've kind of... I don't know if they assured their wheel, the rest of the wheel, that they wouldn't interfere or something like that. But I got the impression that the rest of the wheel didn't think they were going to interfere. And I cannot for the life of me remember what Wilno was saying to people at this point.
Please don't kill me.
I
I want to live. Yeah, basically.
So, yeah, and like the Italians are completely dissolved right now. Poor old Sicily, sitting in Sardinia, has no allies anywhere near. The Spanish are rolling over them. The Papal State has declared independence from Italy, but they are about to be run down by the Holy Balkan Empire anyway. It's just people getting slaughtered here. Yeah, so, shall we move ahead to the moves then?
Oh, jeez, wow. This was actually a fast phase. Yeah, let's do it.
Alright. So, move spring 1646. I'm so used to saying 19 from standard diplomacy.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I do bounce the Luxembourg out of English Channel, and to my surprise, they actually don't even move in this direction. They hold Amsterdam, they stick to their word entirely, and they actually move in completely the opposite direction with Hesse, which is amusing because Nuremberg moves in behind them, and ends up adjacent to an open Luxembourg.
Yep. Kiel, you notice Gothenburg held with their unit in Kiel.
Yes. Why did they do that, Ezio?
They did that because I think they didn't hear from me, and they just, like, they missed that when I said, hey, here's your orders, Gothenburg, and everyone else, the Vikings, and then when they saw Luxembourg say, you need to move Bremen into Wadden Sea to let Kiel move into Bremen, There is no actual explicit order for Kiel to move into Bremen in that order sequence. It's a justification for why Bremen's moving, but not an explicit order. So if we read it incredibly literally, um, it
Yeah,
just moves
you
into
get this.
you get that. And that is pretty sad, I'd say.
Yes.
Because obviously, like, we want to have more armies, right? An army in Bremen, could support Rostock into Brandenburg, for example. Because obviously you'll notice that Utrecht is following through with the plan, moving into the Sound and Rostock, and then is getting ready to wreck some people. Um, with the subs, you'll see the subs stuck to their word. And so Spitsbergen and agreed to letting Oslo stay alive, moved over to Greenland Sea. Um, so that's good. There's pressure on Reykjavik. Edinburgh's in Irish Sea, which is potentially useful because now they can potentially hold Plymouth. They can mess with Edinburgh. I think that it makes a lot of sense for example, Wessex to support Irish Sea into Edinburgh. I think that'd be great. They're both Vikings still. But uh, Wessex is giving a lot of rumblings to the whole like rest of the GBA and thinks that Edinburgh is gonna step. Um, what does this anyways? But here we are, and it wouldn't surprise me because it's what's going on in the West. And again, I don't really care what happens with the Brits. Like, yeah, I want the other Vikings to grow. It's nice if they do, but like, it's not me, so why do I really care? But like, that's what's going on. And you see, Wessex walked out of Bergen, right? Like, everyone did the things, and it all just worked. Great. Edinburgh could have bounced North Sea, but I didn't support myself into Oslo, and I just walk in and now I end up in Skagerrak. Um, I remember after this phase came in, the Oslo player asked me like, "Hey, why'd you move into Skagerrak?" And obviously, I move into Skagerrak because I don't expect to walk into Oslo like this, and I assume I'm gonna have to support myself into Oslo. But now that I'm in Oslo and Skagerrak, I can just take Bergen.
I
It's
do
like,
know that Finland appears to have walked entirely around Narva. Was that agreed?
well, they are supposed to take Will. No, I think. I'm trying to trade. Okay. One of the things that I want to do is I want to trade Narva for Umia at some point for obvious reasons.
Oh, so that you can
Um,
form
so I can
Sweden.
form
Yeah.
Sweden finally. But I forget exactly. Like, Smolensk needed to move out because of our negotiations with the HBE, and Kirk's needed to move to Moscow because of negotiations with the HBE. And it's gonna line up so that way we take Arkhangelsk and things are fine. And this, of course, made the HBE grumble at Wallachia for the negotiations. Like, wait, why are we not getting any builds from this? Um, I seem to recall Ankara. No, what's Smyrna?
Smyrna.
Smyrna, I think, was a particularly proponent of this.
So they
But
were annoyed that Archangels was getting the build out of Golden Horde. Was the
yes, and again,
yeah,
I think it's gonna. I'm pretty sure it's gonna be Astrakhan, and we're gonna let Moscow be the one to take Circassia. Is how the tactics work here.
that makes sense, especially considering Georgia has managed to get into Dagestan here. Um,
Yes.
yeah, this must have been some trickery with regard to what Golden Horde thought was happening. Um, good
Yeah,
moves on the
looks like it.
HBE part. So
Yes. Yeah, yeah, we can keep going with the HBE and the rest of the South. So the North
yes,
is basically set up. Yeah.
they pivoted to protect Poltava against Archangelisk in case Archangelisk is
Yeah, which again is super
stabs.
unnecessary because we're the Vikings and we tell everyone what to do for every move, so you can see what our moves are. You don't have to be worried about us going for
You
something
know,
crazy, but
here Constantinople is in a really good position to stab. Actually, they have Moldavia. They have an extra unit adjacent to Smyrna, right, which is open, and they have a unit in Wallachia. I'm fairly sure that the HB will negotiate something about taking Moldavia off them, so that that isn't a good.
uh, uh, I,
I
uh,
guess that strays into the next turn. Just as a heads up, we are finishing after we talk about these moves, just because we are reaching our time limit here. So this may end up being a 5-part series. I don't know.
I don't know before.
We're hoping it will be 4. So yeah, that is what the HBE are doing over here, and you'll notice they're also helping the wheel, or over here. Although
Yeah,
Willow is
Croatia moved
jumping
to
in
Banat,
behind.
then moved back to Croatia.
Yes. And here we like say goodbye to the Trieste unit, and that's a really like I was actually really sad about the Trieste unit coming off and like Trieste as a power. They're obviously not dead yet because if their center gets vacated, they can rebuild, but that seems very unlikely to happen.
Yeah.
And like Trieste really, I think, made the biggest move of the game with stabbing the wheel, and it looked so good for a while, and then suddenly fell apart because this Nuremberg Wilno alliance just didn't work with them, right?
Yeah, they went all in on a support from a unit, and then that unit didn't give the support, so they
Yes,
got punished.
and it's
Also,
even
like
like
Southern Italy got cooked.
even
Right?
Southern Italy getting cooked, right? I think it didn't. That they could have thrived without being aligned with Southern Italy, even just as their own thing, because the HB coming in here didn't really impact what they were doing up here at all, apart from the fact that Rome didn't get their build. But if they had got their build, it would have still taken a while to walk up, right? So I was really sad to see Trieste go. I think Trieste gets the player of the match award almost from my point of view because of the big move that they made. At least the move of the match. um, there we go.
Yeah, we're gonna give player of the match to someone
Yeah.
who never was above 2 centers
Yep.
and died 3 years out of the end of the game.
Yes, this ends in not 1649.
Yeah. Okay.
But
I mean, sure. If you want to give player of the match too.
this is the play of the game. Like, well, they get the play of the game award if we're doing like the slow motion replay or whatever after that Overwatch does.
Sure.
We
Yeah,
go
the slow
back to
motion
the,
stab of the wheel. Okay.
do, and then we just have that move appear on the screen. I can't be bothered editing that. I'm not doing that, but it would happen. So yeah, Trieste dies here, and the wheel is just generally doing very well, especially considering Freiburg. Vienna gets their unit into Venice, right? Because Rome is really annoyed at Papal States for doing this kind of stuff. Freiburg walks into Innsbruck, and actually Freiburg isn't under threat anymore because Nuremberg walks out into Hesse, which Luxembourg is very annoyed about.
Strasbourg is in Switzerland.
Yes, but Strasbourg has been very loyal, like extremely loyal.
Yeah.
Yeah, and other moves over here, you'll note that Occitania is getting blown up. You'll note that Madrid is moving up to attack us in France again, because the moment we got off, like, we ended up retreating, they were immediately going, hey, we need to attack France, we need to attack France. And everything I was doing negotiation-wise to try and get, like, Morocco and co off my back, it was all... like, Madrid was saying the opposite every single time. It was very annoying. But it didn't end up mattering, this move, to me. In fact, it's actually a good thing, because at the same time, Marrakesh stabs. And they arranged this stab in the chat, I don't know if it was a few minutes before deadline, but they do manage to hide this, which I think surprises me, because Madrid was one of the more aware people of what was going on. And they set up a convoy to Gibraltar, which is going to be completely unopposed, right? It's absolutely beautiful. I love this stab. And it was the first time I was actually rooting for someone on the board to who was already doing well to continue doing more well, because I hated the Spanish alliance at this point. They got on my nerves so much.
I don't understand why. You guys attacked them.
No, we attacked them because they were constantly threatening to attack us. Like,
they didn't. Whatever. I understand. It's fine. They pissed you off, and you wanted them to.
I am talking about the wrong victim here. Like, Gibraltar wasn't the person to blame, and neither was Baleares. It was Madrid. Madrid was the worst. Madrid was constantly going, we need to attack France, we need to attack France. Like, I've got my army here, I've made friends with everyone around me, there's only one direction I can go, let's go that way.
So, what's the problem? It makes perfect sense. That's how, he has to do it.
It makes sense, but I was, not happy with that at all. I was trying to convince them to, stab anyone around them, and they were completely unwilling to do it. So, yeah. But I was very happy to see the great Caliph make a move against Spain here. Continue the anti-Reconquista And yeah, meanwhile, you've already talked about this area, right? And Luxembourg is very angry at me for bouncing them out here. And I just say, hey, I wasn't really expecting you to hold. Thank you for actually holding. But they had bigger concerns because Nuremberg has just moved into Hesse.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you want to talk about move-wise, or shall we end the episode there?
I think this is a good place to end it. We can then go into fall on our next episode.
Alright, I will leave
We
it
have
on
what?
the clean
How many
map.
years left?
Oh, did you mention that Prussia got blown up?
Well, I mentioned we weren't tapping Gdansk.
Yep. Rest in peace, King of Prussia. You were the
Prussia.
Viking that Ezio decided to sacrifice.
So, technically speaking, he's not dead yet. And the Commonwealth tries to leverage this for negotiations and is like, hey, we'll totally just move Gdansk back into Brandenburg and Prussia can resurrect again. And I'm like, yeah, whatever.
Right, so... But yeah, so we will leave it on the clean map here, post-retreat. You'll note that Paris pulls their unit so that they can rebuild it after the fall. And Naples, like, the Papal State is doing what they can to defend themselves here. Okay, now I see what you mean about these colours. That is, that's quite similar. And yeah, then we end up on the clean map. And this, spring 16th? This should be fall. So, oh, this is the results of
It's
spring.
the end of
Okay.
spring, yeah.
Yeah, so going into the fall, this is where we will leave you. Thank you very much for watching. Oh, and Ezio told me before this recording started that I should be a traditional YouTuber, so I'm gonna say, don't forget to smash that bell button and hit the like and subscribe, yo.
Okay,
That's what
so
they do, right?
real talk, I've looked at the numbers of the things, and of the subscribers, like 8% of you guys have clicked the notification button, and if you don't click that button, being subscribed doesn't actually let you see things when it happens. So that bell button is important, and like we're way under normal YouTube channels as far as percentages of subscribers and stuff, and like it makes sense. But like honestly, it helps. So please do the thing, click the buttons. We gotta do it. Sorry, guys.
God, I feel so, like, bad saying the traditional YouTube stuff. It's so cringeworthy. But yes,
It's not. It's actually important. Okay, it's a thing that matters, and
okay.
we want this channel to get more likes and get more people. So please do the things.
Okay, but if I say it ironically, I'm like freed from all cringe, right? So it's
No,
so
it makes it more cringy. Commit to the bit. It's okay. When we're on this channel, we're YouTubers. That's the point.
All right. Well, don't forget to follow our TikTok. We
We can
don't.
watch CaptainMeme and me do dances with our armies.
Yes. No. It
We'll
is,
do a real wheel. We'll post a real wheel on TikTok. Yes,
We do, yeah.
that's gonna be our short that we do. It's just gonna be us on a custom map of the actual game, just spinning.
There
All
we
right,
go.
I know what I'm
We
gonna
are planning
do.
to do the entire Chaos game in interpreted dance over on TikTok. So please like and subscribe and go to. We don't, as a heads up, we don't actually have a TikTok. Please don't search for us there. If there is a Diplostrats TikTok, congratulations on the enterprising person who has formed that. But yeah, don't forget to like and subscribe and hit the bell button. That is where we'll leave you for this episode. Thank you very much for watching and see you next time.